Welcome to the Mostly Pod Out at Night. Mostly, I am Graveyard, joined by my co-host Salem.
Hello.
This is episode 3 of our new weekly All Things Horror podcast. Our topic for this week is the Predator franchise, including, and this is spoiler warning, the newest entry, Prey, for anyone who's not seen it yet listening to this podcast. So, we're going to start off in discussing the movies, highlights, low points, what we liked about it, give it a scale, and answer some questions about it. And we're going to start off with Predator 1, which came out in, I believe, 1987.
Correct.
So, kind of a short premise of the movie is there is a team led by Dutch and they're extracting a CIA operative out of the jungle. Is that correct?
Well, they were told he was a cabinet minister, and then later on they found out that it was a CIA operative. Dylan tricked them.
Yes. And this movie stars Arnold Schwarzenegger as Dutch, Carl Weathers as Hutch,
Dylan.
Mm-hmm. And then it's very actiony type oriented movie. You see Carl Weathers, you see Arnold Schwarzenegger, you go, okay, they have big guns, they're going through jungle, they're fighting, guerrilla, fighters out in the jungle. Very actiony oriented, I feel, for the movie as a whole in the initial beginnings of it. And as they're going through the jungle and blowing up a lot of stuff and a lot of people, they start noticing that, they're getting kind of picked off one by one. I'd say almost slasher-ish style and kind of gruesome ways, right?
Yes.
So, and then they're just, you get to see kind of the point of view of, we don't know what it is, right? We see the infrared thermal of it. We see it kind of learning human speech through its heads up display, and everything with there. And, they get, like I said, they get picked off one by one. And, Dutch learns that as he's crawling through mud, that the creature goes right past him, and he starts figuring out. And, then they kind of have off last 20 minutes ish, almost like a 1-versus-1 showdown of Predator versus Dutch.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
No, yeah, I mean that's exactly what happened. But yeah, Predator, I mean, the first one, it is one of my very, very favorite movies when I was a kid. I mean, I watched it, I don't even know how many times. I mean, I know I had it on VHS. It wasn't the official VHS. It was taped off of HBO or something. But yeah, the tape was unwatchable because I watched it so many times that you literally couldn't even see what was on the tape. That's how many times I watched it. But yeah, fantastic movie.
No.
And when it was originally written, when it was originally being shopped around to try to get support, it was called Hunter, and it was originally the just one-on-one. It was basically, I don't know if the character's name was Dutch, but it was Dutch's character one-on-one with the Predator in the woods. None of the other stuff was even there.
Now, is it true they thought that Sly Stallone was going to be the Predator at one point? In the initial beginnings of it?
I don't know if Sly Stallone was in it, but at the very beginning, they did hire Jean-Claude Van Damme. He was supposed to be the Predator, and he was on set. They had a suit made for him. He was on set. He was filmed scenes and stuff. And the original concept was he was supposed to be like an alien, like a ninja alien. Like he was supposed to be very sneaky and very fast. And then basically, if you see Jean-Claude Van Damme, I mean, yeah, he's ripped, right? I mean, this is his prime around this time period, late 80s. He's ripped.
Right.
But if you put him next to Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jesse Ventura, and Carl Weathers, even with the suit on, he is not imposing at all. I mean, he's just not. So they were already kind of up in the air. They're like, I don't know if this is working. And then Jean-Claude Van Damme was very, very uncomfortable in the suit. Like he couldn't see, he couldn't breathe. He did not know, they couldn't do anything like acrobatic. He couldn't do any of his moves or anything like that. So the alien wasn't coming off as ninja like as they thought. And with him complaining so much, so they just they got rid of him. So he was originally part of it. they fired him. They brought in Kevin Peter Hall, who is just a giant dude. He's like 7 foot, whatever, and he's huge. And they put him in that suit, and the suit's great. Obviously, he could not see in that suit at all, to the point where he had to like rehearse the scene with the mask off so he could memorize where things were on the scene, so that when he put the mask on, he would have to do it blind because he literally couldn't see at all.
Well, and it's weird if it was going to be Van Damme in the suit. It seems like just a weird hiding point for him. Like, he was a big star at that point in time. It'd be weird just to put him completely in costume, just to play a role that really had no voice work. It was just motion, right, and menacing intimidation, and it makes sense. Like, why would you put someone so recognizable in that suit,
right?
Just for that.
Yeah, there was a lot of factors in getting rid of him, and him wanting like screen time, and him wanting like screen time without his mask on was another thing. One of the funny thing is the guy who plays the Predator does actually have a cameo of his face in the movie. If you remember the very end in the helicopter,
yeah.
The one helicopter pilot looks back like, "You guys okay?"
Yeah,
that's him.
Well, I mean, I think that's a very common thing. Like, people that are always under the mask, like Robert Englund did that a lot in Nightmare on Elm Street, right? Whether he's playing Freddy himself or just other roles. Like, he was the bus driver in number 2. He was one of the maniacs in the scene of like the 100 Maniacs. Even Kane Hodder did stuff like that, as Jason, that he would play Jason, no speaking role, but he would cameo as other characters, so his face is seen. I think that's a very common thing for people that you don't get to see their face. Obviously we have a lot of debate now with stuff like that, with Pedro Pascal and supposedly all the stuff with the Mandalorian, and even with Halo, the TV show, people argue his mask was taken off a lot. And you don't really get that in Halo for a very long time in the games. So that makes sense that he would want his face to be seen.
Yeah, and it's just a very quick scene. You have no idea who it is unless you look through the credits and see that it is, or you heard the stories about it. I mean, it's not obvious at all. It's just hey, it's a nod to the guy, like, hey, you did a good job. Here's your face.
Right. Now, you said you recorded it. Now, did you see it in theaters? Did you just know it was on HBO and recorded it? How did you first hear about Predator as a movie to watch?
Well, at first I rented it, and that was just because I was a huge Schwarzenegger fan at that time. I mean, you're talking, I was a kid. What is this, 87? So I was like 9. I was a huge Schwarzenegger fan. I mean, I think my favorite movie for a long time was Commando. And, which is, you watch it now and it's a very cheesy action movie, but when you're 9 years old in the 80s, it's like the coolest thing ever. So because I love that movie so much, I basically just rented everything that Schwarzenegger was in. So every time a new movie came out that had Schwarzenegger in it, I rented it immediately. So that was where I originally heard it.
For me, as you know, I didn't watch a lot of action movies, especially in the 80s. And for the longest time growing up, I always considered Predator to be an action movie because it had Carl Weathers, Jesse Ventura, and Arnold in it. So it's something I just didn't watch. I never really considered it to be a must watch in the horror realm of things, right? Now, obviously, as we get down the list, when we get to like Alien vs. Predator, I go, okay, I need to rewatch these. I tend to rewatch movies before the next one comes out. Like, I know, Prey comes out, I rewatched everything leading up to Prey. Now, obviously, I couldn't rent it when it came out, and it had to be on TV the first time I probably saw it. It probably would have been on the Sci-Fi Channel, would be my guess. When they would be playing that, I would have watched it for the first time. I couldn't tell you when that was, honestly. Like I said, it just bypassed me for so long just because it seemed so action oriented, and I just didn't care for them at that time.
See, I was a big action fan at that point in time.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, it's a really great movie because it straddles both. I mean, The first half of the movie is an action movie. It is just an action movie. That's it. And then the second half is, it's a slasher movie essentially.
Right. I mean, I don't remember marketing for it or anything like that. I don't know if you do either, but did they give any, do you know of any hints that this was going to be an alien at the end of this, or was it more geared towards action? That's probably what drew people in.
Well, I mean, Schwarzenegger was known for action at that time, so basically anything he put his name on was going to have action, at least as a main element. I
Right.
believe I believe the trailers and everything had, they said like something not of this world kind of thing. I mean, obviously they
Right.
didn't give away what it was, but yeah, they told you it was not from Earth, but they didn't give any, they didn't give all of it away, obviously.
Right. And prepping for this podcast, like I said, rewatched all this stuff too very, very recently, as I know you did as well. How do you feel the graphics hold up in today's age? We're looking at something that's now 35 years old. The camouflage or invisibility aspect of it. How do you think that went?
I mean, most of it, aside like the suits and the, and all that kind of stuff most of it was practical stuff. So it still looks great. I think they did a really good job. I mean, an exceptionally good job with that, the visual, bending light camouflage at that time. I mean, to have like, you see like Dutch's face like through it and all that kind of stuff, having the slightly distorted stuff. I mean, that's like far beyond. I mean, when you see like his eyes flash green, it's obviously old. Like a lot of the electrical spark stuff looks old. I mean, a lot of movies from that time period, the electrical stuff or lightning stuff always looks really old. But I mean, other than that, but it looks great for the time. I think it still holds up now. I mean, it's not distracting.
I mean, do you find it just, I know, it's an action, sci-fi, horror that, I don't think you saw many action movies with those sci-fi or horror elements in there for special effects wise, right? It's a lot of explosions and stuff like that, which there is. But when it came to the Predator, when it came to the kills, when it came to hanging up the bodies and skinning them alive, I don't think that was necessarily seen that way in any action movie at that point in time. Maybe some Terminator stuff, but not as much as we got in Predator.
Well, definitely not mainstream. I mean, Predator was the first, I want to say, mainstream movie that kind of brought that stuff in, or at least the first one that I can remember. There's a lot of them around that time that kind of tried to follow that same formula. I mean, because Predator was huge. So there's a lot of them that tried to follow that same formula. Like I remember that one with Rutger Hauer. Was it I Come in Peace, I think, or something? I mean, but they're all kind of similar. There's like a million of them. They weren't all that great, but they were all trying to copy Predator. But yeah, I mean, it's the first one I can remember that started that trend, or at least moved into that space.
Right. Now, obviously, as discussed, when they go into the encampment where the person's supposed to be held, they find the woman that's there, and she talks about that her people had word for Predator, like this has happened before. When you first heard that, did you think, oh, there's this, a good lore building, world building starting with this movie?
At the time I didn't. At the time, all movies did that. They would try to, give you a history that, oh, this stuff always happens. This isn't a brand new thing. But now watching it, yeah, definitely. Like, even back in the first movie, they were trying to show you that, hey, this happens all over. This isn't an isolated incident. This is, one of many.
Right. I think is a very, very solid entry into this franchise. As a whole, we'll discuss, the other movies in this franchise, but it's very strong, and I think it's pretty hard to beat right now as not being if not the best of the franchise as a whole.
Of the franchise, it is definitely the best. It's my opinion.
Right.
But it's also the first, which is, and a lot of that, a big part of that is probably nostalgia, because I can't watch it without remembering how great it was when I was a kid. So,
right, like I said, I couldn't tell you the first time I watched it all the way through that wasn't on TV. It might have been late 90s for me, honestly. But this has been a big movie for you. What do you think the highlights of this movie are?
I mean, for me, as a kid and even now, I really like, ensemble casts where they have like a bunch of interesting characters together that actually like, they're not just nameless, faceless stuff. There's a lot of times in movies where you have like, little military units or whatever, your leader guy is always going to be, the character that everybody, knows or, gets that personality feel for. And there might be like one other person. And they usually just, get to know that one other person so that you care when they die is usually how it goes. And the rest of them are just faceless people that die. That's it. Right. That's usually how it goes. And in this one, they all have unique personalities. I mean, they're all fleshed out from the very beginning. Like every single one of them has a name that is mentioned in the movie. Every one of them, has, like a specialty, and they do, something, every character does something interesting, right? I mean, even the guy who dies first has, like a couple of stupid jokes that he tells because he's like the jokey guy. So like,
and that's Shane Black, right?
Right. Correct. Yeah. Who comes in later on, but
right.
But yeah, I mean, it's they really, sell it that this is a unit. These are guys that have worked together. These are all interesting characters, and they're obviously being pushed into a situation that's beyond them, but they really pull it off. That they really have really good chemistry as a team, I thought. And that was the thing that I loved then, and I still love it now.
Right. Yeah, for me, the highlights is really when we start getting into the more horror aspect of it all. Obviously, for me, being a bigger horror fan than action fan, I really enjoyed the picking off one by one. That each kill was kind of unique in its own way, right? And the collecting of the skulls. Something we could easily discuss for a bit is, what was his purpose of the movie? What was the Predator's purpose of being in the jungle?
This one and this movie, the purpose of him being in the jungle is, whether he's been here for a while or whether he just came here and, people were there before. I remember as a kid, I always thought, well, it was just the same hunter that would just come out only when it was really hot or whatever. I think that's what she said. It was, he only comes out when it's really hot.
Right.
But I didn't really catch on to that, they meant like a different hunter comes every time. But yeah, it's essentially just a hunter looking for the best, specimen, looking for the best human that they can find. And obviously they're killing people and, he's getting trophies and stuff. And he's like, yeah, these trophies are great, but I can get better. And so he just keeps hunting and keeps looking until he finds one that really satisfies that trophy urge that he has. And then he's like, okay, this one's great. Now I can stop.
Right. And, it doesn't sound like, in the movie that, yes, there's been other predators or even a similar creature, the same one. It might have been the same one. I don't think we ever know is, when do they actually stop? When did they start? How many people they go through or did they all get defeated like this one did? I can't imagine that. Or would they would have known more about the Predator as a whole, right? Because let's face it, I think he's a sore loser at the end and blows up, right? Self-destructs to.
Yeah, that's definitely an element of it. I don't think that was the whole reason why he did it, though. I think more at the end. Because they kind of reflect on that more through the franchise, is that they blow themselves up like that or blow their ships up like that to make sure that their prey does not get their technology. Because
so
they want
it's more of a. So go ahead.
I think, yeah. Like I'm assuming you're going to say, like, well, go ahead.
They want to blow up the evidence.
Yeah,
they want to get rid of the evidence of that they exist.
Well, that, and I don't think based on how they like show up sometimes, I don't think they're all that concerned about people knowing that they exist. I think they just don't want people having their technology, because if their prey gets their technology and they're on equal, standing, that's going to make things a lot harder for them. Depending on them, some of them seem to like the challenge and seem to like it when it's harder, but obviously they come in with this technology, so they're not like, crazy sportsmen, right? That try to fight bears with their bare hands. If they're not doing that, they're coming in with weapons. But I just don't think they want their prey having their weapons. They want to fight them on their terms, kind of thing.
Right. So do you think their hunts are more for the trophy than the best prey? Because they scan Arnold's skull, as we discussed before, that his skull seems to be like the ideal skull that he wants for his trophy case, right?
Right.
So do you think it's more about the trophy or more about the hunt?
I think it's both. I think it's like they have to find someone that fits that perfect trophy, niche, right? But they also want to have a story about this. You know what I mean? Like that's why when he really saw that, Dutch had like the perfect trophy, the perfect skull, that he's like, okay, this guy is worthy of me fighting bare hands, which, I mean, he really didn't. He was using his knife anyway, but
right.
As close to bare hand as he was, he wasn't shooting at him or anything like that. Like he deemed him worthy in his eyes. Like he actually, stepped up and showed him that, hey, I'm on the same level as you. So now he's going to fight him bare hand, and then now he has a story to tell from this skull, and now he's has something to be proud of,
right?
Or as you say later in the franchise, looking for DNA. But we'll talk about that later.
Right. So do you think it's very sporting for him to go through the people that the Predator goes to the people that he does, just to get the kill, just for that? I think it's sporting at the end against Dutch, but anyone in between, I wouldn't necessarily say that, right?
Well, I mean, it depends on how you look at it. I mean, you look at hunters in our world, right?
Right.
I mean, they're going out there with rifles and camouflage and scents and calls and, sonar and game cameras and shit like that. I mean, they're nowhere near even terms, right?
Right.
I mean, that's just what hunters do. They have tools that help them hunt better. I mean, obviously this is more of a lifestyle thing for them because, like you said, he wanted to fight him one-on-one because this guy proved to be a real challenge.
Right.
I mean, they're just doing what hunters do. Hunters, go somewhere to hunt something with their tools against, whatever the animals have as theirs.
Right. So do you think there are any low points in this movie that you could just go outright ridiculous or just kind of like just seem out of place for you?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, if overall this is a fantastic movie, I would say if anything, I think the ending part of it went a bit too long, with like him, the one-on-one kind of thing. But I think that was just the kind of holdover from the original script being just that.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, I really don't think, I mean, again, I love the movie, so I can't really complain too much. But if I had to come up with a complaint, that would be
the thing that stuck out to me after the rewatches is them impersonating the human voice, which is, you discussed with hunters, they have duck calls, they have deer calls, stuff like that. So it's very similar to that.
Right.
It just, with like him, the Predator talking just seems so out of place for me. Speaking English.
Well, he really only did one time.
In this movie.
Yes. In this movie, he did one time. And it was literally him just like repeating back what he just said. He might not have even known what it meant. I mean, obviously it meant something for us watching, in the, cinema world, it meant something, but he was just, mocking back. It'd be like if a duck quacked at you and you quack back at it,
Right. So, our rating scheme for these movies, we're going to do, rating scales for movie reviews, stuff like this. This week is going to be trophy skulls. On a scale of 1 to 10, trophy skulls, what would you give this movie for yourself?
This movie, in this franchise, I would say gets 10 out of 10 trophy skulls.
10 out of 10?
Yes. And it's, I mean, I also love, I just want to add one more thing before we move on, is just how shredded everybody was in this movie. I mean, they are outrageously. I mean, just crazy ripped.
Right.
And you read about it, and like they got up at like 3 a.m. to work out. They worked out for hours before they started shooting so that they looked as ripped as possible. And that was like, you know, Arnold and Jesse Ventura and, you know, just about everybody in there is shredded. I think the only guy that doesn't take his shirt off and the whole thing is Bill Mack, who plays, Bill Duke, who plays Mac.
Right.
He doesn't take his shirt off, but everybody else is shirtless in multiple scenes of the movie. I also read a thing about Carl Weathers, who did the same thing. He worked out like crazy too, but he made sure that nobody saw him do it. He made sure that everybody was out of the gym when he went in there because he wanted it to seem like he had a naturally perfect body. Because he saw Arnold working and everybody else working so hard to try to be as ripped as possible. And so he was doing the same thing, but he didn't show anybody else that he was doing it. That's why the one scene where in the very beginning where they like grab each other and they got these like just veins just bulging out of their arms.
The meme-worthy photo shoot, yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly. That is them basically like trying to one up each other with how ripped they are.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which it's just fantastic. It's like one of the rare instances I think of like positive male testosterone.
Right.
You know, where it actually came to like a good result, you know, instead of the normal bad result.
Right.
And the only other little anecdote I'm going to put in there before I hand it over to you is that Sonny Landham, who is the guy who played Billy, the tracker.
Yeah.
They actually, well, there's two things I'm going to put in. One thing is that there's rumors that they actually had to hire a bodyguard for him during the movie, not to protect him, but protect everyone else from him.
Really?
Yeah, because he was apparently very, very unstable on set. And there was people that were concerned that he was going to do something bad, so they did that. And another little thing is he tried running for governor of Kentucky because he thought that he would, you know, that because Arnold and Jesse Ventura both won that he had a shoe in.
Interesting.
for doing it. Yeah, obviously he failed. And the other thing is that the scene where he's standing on that branch and he like cuts his chest.
Yeah.
They've actually said, like, you know, people that are like, you know, canon in there is that he was a direct descendant of the native people in Prey, and that he was living out a past life of one of those ancestral characters. That's why he did that.
Interesting.
Yeah. I just thought that was interesting. But yes, 10 out of 10 trophy skulls. On to you.
Oh, I mean, in this list, I think I like one or two other movies almost as good as this. So I might have to give this a 9 of trophy skulls for me. Just because it's so action oriented. You know, like I said, so 9 trophy skulls for me, 10 for you. And, you know, here's the question. Is it horror?
See, it's a good question. If you would ask me if the second half is, I would say definitely. It's like kind of textbook, like slasher, right? You know,
right.
One at a time being picked off kind of thing. But the first half of the movie, up until, you know, the first death of the team, it is an action movie. It is that's all it is. It is an action movie, you know, with, you know, the predator lurking around, but, you know, he doesn't, you know, take any part in it until after the action part is over. So there's really 2 parts of it. So yes, the second half is horror. The first half is action. So is it all horror? No. Is it some? Definitely.
Would you say action horror or horror action? If you had to pick one first.
For this one, I would say action horror. I would say it's probably more action than horror.
Right.
I mean, that's not a bad thing in my world, but I love it altogether. But yes, I would say it's probably more action because, I mean, you know, you got Arnold walking around holding his gun up with one arm, which he's just doing to show that he can. I mean, there's just bullets flying everywhere.
Right.
You know, they shoot an empty spot in the forest for like 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah. You know, for me, you know, with my tattoos, we've discussed before, is, you know, I have my horror sleeve and I have my sci-fi leg, and I have Predator on my sci-fi leg.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's a predator, it's an alien, so therefore it's more sci-fi. Just the creature itself for me. So alien resides, or predator resides on my lake next to the side of an alien. But that's a whole other franchise.
Mm-hmm. No,
So,
closely related though.
Yeah. Like I said, I didn't have room in my horror sleeve, and I go, I think it needs to be, it needed to be on me as a tattoo, and it decided to be on my sci-fi leg.
That's fair.
All right, so next we have Predator 2 that was released in 1990 and set in the far future of 1997.
Yeah, super far future.
Super far future. You want to do the brief synopsis on this one?
Sure. Yeah. So it's essentially the Predator trades in the actual jungle for the concrete jungle of L.A. Set in 1997. Set in the climate catastrophe heat wave of 109 degrees. Which is, I mean, that's where we're at now. They were just off by a few years.
Right.
But yeah, so there's this huge, war in the city between the Colombians and the Jamaicans over, the drugs in the city. And, I mean, the gangs have, assault weapons and grenade launchers and body armor. I mean, it is an actual like war in the street. So Danny Glover plays like, super cop, Harrigan, right?
Right.
And so, he's like, I think he's the only cop that really like kills anybody. I mean, the other cops are there, but they don't really do much.
Correct.
They just like, wisecrack and like back him up, but they don't like do anything. He like kills everybody by himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, he's a super cop. When they're like, trying to take out this one Colombian, like, hit team that's killed, other cops and stuff like that. And they go in there and they see, everybody's dead and they're all strung up. So yeah, the Predator is here, killed all those guys before they could get to him. Does the same thing to the other side. There's a couple of these, crime scenes, where people are being strung up and skinned and, but essentially they're saying that, this thing is attracted to the conflict of it.
Right.
So they're trying to investigate, trying to know what's going on. Danny Glover eventually like asks for a meeting with the king of the Jamaican, King Willie. And he tells him it's, a monster from the spirit world, and then he gets killed. And then it just starts hunting, I don't know, the cops for some reason. They don't really say why he's going after the other cops because they didn't really do it much. But
they have weapons, and that's what he seems to go for, is something to discuss. Right. If you're unarmed, Predator doesn't typically kill you.
Correct. Well, certain ones, most of them. No.
Most of them, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, and he won't kill you if you're pregnant, even if you are armed. Apparently, that's the thing we find out in this movie. Is the one cop is a lady cop and she's pregnant. There's no side story about her being pregnant. She just is.
Right.
And then it's like, they show like this, he looks through her body and sees that she's pregnant, and even though she's armed and was shooting at him, he lets her go anyway. I don't know why. Kills poor Bill Paxton. So of course, Danny Glover, super cop, gets upset. And he's like, trying to figure out where it is. He narrows it down to the slaughterhouse. I forgot how. So he goes to the slaughterhouse, and then he finds out that this other federal team led by Gary Busey is on the case, and they're, trying to capture this alien, and because they know what it is, they know its weaknesses and all that, and they're trying to like trap it because it eats beef. So they're setting up this beef place where apparently he goes to eat to try to capture him. And Jane is his second in command.
Yes.
I forgot he was in that movie. He's so young. So young.
I think, I mean, he was in X-Files as well. So I knew him from X-Files before Firefly.
He's been in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
I just,
yeah.
Big Firefly fan, so I noticed. Yeah. So, of course, they're, they think that, he can only see in infrared and he can't see in anything else. So they're using ultraviolet lights. And, of course, this is when the first time we find out that the Predator can use other light spectrums in his mask. So he can see ultraviolet lights. He sees their lights and then just starts picking them off, of course.
Right.
And then, him and Danny Glover have a showdown that goes on for a while across buildings and across rooftops, and they end up
down drain pipes.
Yeah, down drain pipes. They eventually end up in the sewer somehow. And then, they have their final showdown in the Predator ship. And of course, that's where we have our link between Aliens vs. Predator, is that he has his trophy wall and there's an alien skull on the trophy wall. He defeats the Predator in hand-to-hand combat, using his own little disc cutter device.
Right.
And then as soon as he kills him, other Predators come out, but instead of killing him, they kind of insinuate that they see him as an equal now, or at least, not worthy of killing right now, like he earned his life kind of thing. And they toss him the gun, which is, it's his Raphael Andolini 1715, showing that, they've been coming here since at least the 1700s.
Right.
And then it ends.
Now, what, it's 10 years later, right? After, canonically after the first Predator, right? And they have, I don't remember her name for the first one. They have her talk about the events that happened. There's like a little voiceover, I believe, on a tape of the events. And Gary Busey talked about, and was boggling my mind about this movie was, they said it was like leveled 30 city blocks with the detonation.
Yeah.
There's no way Arnold outran that, first and foremost.
Okay. Did you see his legs in that movie? I mean, he could have probably Hulk jumped that. But no, there was scenes of her in the movie that were they were cut out. They were deleted scenes. But the same actress came back,
right,
and did a few scenes. And one of those scenes is still technically in the movie. I guess if you look at when they're in the van, like reenacting that alien scene where they're watching them all die on the cameras.
Yeah,
it's literally like the same scene from Aliens. Like
correct.
The whole, give me that,
Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me? Shit. It was like literally the exact same scene. But apparently if you look closely in that scene, there is another camera of showing an interrogation room, and the person sitting in the interrogation room is her.
Right.
So she's still technically there, but all the voice roles and everything that she had, they cut out.
Right. So for this movie, obviously, in the movie world 10 years later, when you first saw this and you heard that, did you think that implied that they only came every 10 years? Or do you think there's a constant stream of predators coming to Earth? Because if there was, the FBI or CIA would know more about them. But all they had on record was the 1987 events, I believe.
Well, yeah, that's the only one that they said that they knew, or at least that's the one where they got the most out of it.
Right.
And to be fair, before the 80s, we didn't really have the technology to be able to explain or say what that was, or capture it in any way. So I don't really, so before that, they might have been coming for a long time. I just don't think that we had the technology or the methods to say it. Because, just some crazy guy saying, "Hey, I saw an alien," they're not going to believe you.
Right.
But as technology gets better, you can explain things, like bending light. Like, okay, we understand what bending light means, so you could, you're invisible. But somebody in the 50s would have no clue what you're talking about. They would have no idea what that means.
Right. So I believe this is the first time we actually get the name The Predator, right? Isn't that what the agency gave it as a name?
The first one, it was just called Predator because it sounded cool.
Right.
As my guess. But yeah, to it being referred to as The Predator, yeah, I would say that this is the first one. That makes sense.
Yeah, as you said, they went from the jungle to the concrete jungle. Mm-hmm. And obviously, this came out during the LA riots and stuff like that. And there was just so much shooting, I think, in the first 20, 30 minutes of this movie, right? It just seemed like it was like a war, but in the city. Very exaggerated.
Yes, very much so. And it's, there was so much additional blood and so much additional just crazy nudity and stuff that it was originally an NC-17 movie.
Right.
And they had to like cut stuff out of it to bring it down to an R rating. Like that's how crazy it was.
Right.
But yeah, I would say like it's bordering on like ultra violence, just how like crazy over the top it is.
Oh yeah, the room they went into with the Colombians was just smeared.
Yeah,
and then the guy's penthouse suite, right?
Right.
They just rampaged through.
Right.
And so, do you feel, what introduced you to this movie? Did you know about it coming out, and were you excited when you heard about Predator 2?
I was very excited when I heard it was Predator 2, and I was very confused when it was Danny Glover, not Arnold Schwarzenegger. I was like, how do you have Predator 2 with a different character? Because Danny Glover, I knew at that time, was the guy from like Lethal Weapon.
Right.
And it was like, I saw him as more like a comedy guy. And I was like, why would they put like a comedy guy in this action movie? But I mean, obviously the first scene kind of throws that out the window because it's just such crazy violence. And he's the one that like kills all the people. You know what I mean? So,
right.
I mean, that kind of like blew out of my head right away, but I was very, very confused at the time. So I didn't see it in the theater or anything because I was just upset it wasn't Schwarzenegger. But I watched it. I wasn't upset to it. I mean, it wasn't nearly as bad as a lot of the other like sequels that came out in that time frame because, I mean, wow, there was some really, really bad sequel movies. I mean, really bad.
Right.
But it was the same writers. I mean, it was the same, the Thomas brothers with the same people who wrote it. So at least I think that's why it was able to keep a lot of its like continuity between the first and the second, was because it was the same writers. So it's like they knew what they wrote the first time, so they knew what to write, the second time.
And I believe Shane Black was a script doctor for both of them too.
The first one I know he was.
I thought he was for the second.
He might have been. That I don't know for sure. The first one was funny because McTiernan, who was the director of the first one, who's a very, very well-known action director from that time, one of the best, right?
Yeah.
But that was like his first movie. And everybody was very, very concerned that he was not going to be able to do it right. So Shane Black was put on the movie not only to act in it and not only to be a script doctor, but also to keep his eye on McTiernan. and he was supposed to report back to the studio if McTiernan looked like he wasn't cut out for it, if he wasn't doing well. He was supposed to report back and say that, hey, he's not cutting it. We need to get somebody else here. Luckily, they didn't have to change that, but that was the real reason why he was.
Right. And this movie towards the end, once again, they spoke to Danny Glover, right? The Predator spoke, or one of the Predators spoke, handed him the really old pistol, and blew up. Right?
No,
there wasn't an explosion. It was just taken off.
It just took off, but it was like inside of a sewer, like a very closed space.
Right.
So I think what they did is like when it took off, all the fire coming out of the engines was that big explosion.
Okay.
But it didn't blow up. They just they just took the ship and left because that was the ship of the guy who was there hunting that got killed. So they took him back.
Right. Now, in comparison between Predator 1 and Predator 2, obviously you had Arnold in 1 and Danny Glover in the very two different aspects, characters. Do you think the Predator ever considered Danny Glover to be the ultimate prize, or do you think he considered the crime lords to be the prizes?
I think he considered the crime lords to be the prizes. I mean, I think he saw the cops as being pretty good because he saw them kill a lot of these gang people.
Right.
I think they were secondary though. I mean, I don't think he really cared that much about them because I guess the Bill Paxton, he did take his skull. He didn't bother taking anybody else's skull from that whole subway where he killed 100 people or whatever. Right. I mean, it was a lot of people. I don't know, but yeah, but Bill Paxton's head was the only one that he took, and I think that was because he saw him as the only one that was any kind of challenge from there. But I mean, I think at first I don't think he saw Danny Glover as an equal at all, and I think Danny Glover just showed him that he was later on.
Right.
When I think really when he noticed it is when they were, fighting on the roof and he cut his hand off with his with his little like
Right.
cutting tool, little throwing disc.
Yeah.
I think that's when he really saw him as, I need to kill this guy and take his head.
Now, did you
before that? I don't think he cared.
Now, do you think if Danny Glover left him alone, that he would have just gone away? Like, was killing him the ultimate thing, or do you think the Predator would have been just like, all right, I'm done here, and gone away anyway?
Yeah, I think he would have. I think he would have left because after he saw this whole ultraviolet light goofy thing with the liquid nitrogen and the radioactive dust, to counteract his invisibility and all that kind of shit. I think he would have been like, you know what? I think I'm just gonna move on. I mean, he might not have stopped hunting, but I think he would have left L.A. at that time.
Right.
Because obviously it would be too dangerous. I know he likes a challenge, but that's I don't think that was a little too much for him. And I think that was his plan, honestly. And I think Danny Glover stopped him from doing that. But I think he was still doing that even though Danny Glover was chasing him. He was still went back to his ship.
Right.
Anyway, so
now
I think he was trying to leave. I think Danny Glover forced the confrontation.
Now, do you think, in terms of the movie, did it make sense for Danny Glover to stop him? Because he was cleaning up the streets, realistically, right?
Right.
So, like you said, it's just Super Cop protecting L.A. against any threat that came up. Predator being the threat, Danny Glover's character stopped him.
Well, I think at that point he was trying to get revenge for his fellow cops, right? Because they portrayed it well in the movie, but also in real life. Cops, look out for other cops, right? So if somebody kills a cop, they do everything they can to track that guy down. And I think they were doing that same thing because he killed Danny and he killed Bill Paxton. I don't remember his character's name, but he killed both of them, and he saw them as his cop buddies on his own team, and I think he was out for revenge.
So if the cops stayed out of it completely, would have innocents died, or it just been the crime lords?
It would have just by the Predator. It would have just been the crime lords, or the criminals, because they were the ones fighting the war. They were the ones showing that they were the alphas, right?
Right.
So I think those are the ones he was going after, right? When the cops got involved and he saw them fighting and saw the potential in them as well, that's why he went after it. So yeah, they would have stayed completely out of it. The Predator would not have killed anybody, but I think the crime lords would have killed a lot more innocent people.
Okay.
So I think, they couldn't just sit by and watch while they're killing innocent people. They had to get involved. And I think it played out the way it should have.
All right. So highlights and low points of this movie for you.
Highlights. I really liked the world building that they did. I know it was the far future of 1997, but I really liked how they set it up. They made it really feel like a city like on fire, like a city eating itself.
Right.
They really showed that it was like, this is not a good place to be, and the cops are in a very, very bad place, and they're fighting a war too.
Right.
I think they did a really good job with that whole world building and showing that. I think that was fantastic. The low point would probably be just the weird, gratuitous, like nudity and stuff that they had in there that they were putting in there. I think just to step it up from the original, just to have that, that over the top, sequel energy is, I think, why they threw that stuff in there. To me, that I think that like whole nudity scene and that poor woman had to sit there for so long,
right? And
like
blood,
just like the guy holding her hair, like screaming, while she just sitting there. Anyway, I thought that was a low point. I thought it was pointless. I think they could have gotten their point across without doing that. But again, it's 80s movies. A lot of times they like to show nudity because they can. So
for me, the highlight is the subway scene. It was very, very horror, I think, with everything, with the tracking through the trains, the flashing lights, it being dark, and just the way the Predator was taking out people, especially Bill Paxton's character, right?
Right.
I think that was the most horror that we got in like the sense of horror, not just action or violence, but horror, like not just shooting, right? Right.
It was a really cool scene, like when they were chasing him down the subway, and he had Bill Paxton body, and he just like ripped the skull and the spine out of his body and just like tossed the body aside.
Yep.
That was
it was a great kill. It was a fantastic kill.
That was good.
Low points for me is kind of the ending, right? I mean, we got it's probably not necessarily the film's fault, but it might have been because we didn't get more Predator until you would argue Predators, but we have Alien versus Predator in the middle. Like, it kind of stopped the franchise for a long while. And I don't know if it's because it was so out of place and maybe people didn't get it. But like I said, the ending just showing, hey, there's other Predators, and they had like set up the tease of Alien versus Predator. And, at that time, there had only been 2 movies each. I don't think we were ready for, them being pitted against each other at that point in time.
No, not at that time. Interesting enough, Predators was Robert Rodriguez was a big part of that. They approached him to write and move forward with a Predator sequel in the 90s, and he wrote Predators in 94.
Okay,
that should have been the next sequel, and they just didn't greenlight it at that time. Now, the funny thing is, they greenlit it 15 years later as is. Okay, so they didn't change anything. They didn't have him redo it or anything. They just greenlit his 1994 script and moved forward with that. So they had to make changes because of the time and everything. But
right,
that Predators was supposed to come out in 1994. Or probably filmed in 94 and
right.
Came out in 95. But yeah, it got held off for 15 years because of who knows why.
Right. And something I want to point out for my childhood is I don't remember Predator coming out. Predator 2, all of a sudden, there was Predator action figures, toys, and aliens prepping for this Alien versus Predator hinted. Between Predator 2 and Alien 3, all of a sudden, we had kids' toys, which I found very odd because I knew
a lot of them.
I was born in the 80s, 84. But when Predator 2 came out, all of a sudden there was action figures that people I knew growing up, people had, not knowing the movie. It was just sci-fi action figures that people liked.
Yeah, well, they also went in a lot of wacky directions too. They had a lot of aliens of different animals.
Right.
You know what I mean? So they had rhino alien, elephant alien. They had all these different ones, and then they had the same ones, only these ones are glow in the dark, see-through ones.
Right.
They just released the same ones. I remember those a lot too. Yeah, they weren't really attached to any particular movie or anything. Because most of those figures didn't exist in any film media at all. They were just toys.
Right. I think the Predator glowed in the dark, or I think one of them you're able to look through the visor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had all a bunch of different ones. Yeah, there was aliens ones, there was Predator ones. It was definitely a big joint thing. But yeah, most of the stuff was figures and toys.
Right.
Well, there was also the Aliens vs. Predator video game, the arcade game, which was, I loved it, but it had nothing to do with the canon of the world. But it was fantastic. Dutch was in it, but he had a robot arm for some reason.
Right.
And then he had a little Japanese girl sidekick for some reason. But it was
a beat 'em up. It was beat 'em up.
Yeah.
The beat 'em ups had nothing to do with most of the stuff that they did anyway.
Right.
All right, so number of trophy skulls for you for this movie.
Predator 2, I will give 7 out of 10 trophy skulls.
I'll agree. I will also give it 7 out of 10. It's a solid entry. Not as good as the first one. Next question is it horror?
Again, I think it follows the same formula the first one does. Is that, although I think this one would probably be even more action than horror, because most of it is just shootout stuff.
Right.
But it follows the same thing. Half the movie is action, half the movie is horror. But I think the element of being picked off one by one is a little bit less in this one.
Right.
It's more they just have set pieces where he goes in and just kills a shit ton of people. but it's not really like picking anybody off one by one. I mean, they kind of do in a little bit, but it's like they're so close together. I don't think it counts.
Right.
So yeah, I would say it follows the same pattern as the first one, but I'd say this one has a bit more action than the
first one. I agree with that, but I think the kill scenes were more horror in this one than the first one.
Yeah, they were definitely more violent.
Yeah,
they were definitely more bloody and violent.
Well, because a couple people just got shot by his shoulder cannon, which is, action, not necessarily horror, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so next, canonically, we have Alien versus Predator. I know we can discuss a whole bunch about this. We are going to focus only on the Predator side of this because we're going to recap this as well. On the Alien side, when we do the Alien franchise, but Alien versus Predator essentially is we get introduced to a whole lot of elements that are set up in the alien world of, Wayland is looking at a potential pyramid, a drill site in an island off the Antarctic, right? Mm-hmm. And, so they get a whole bunch of research people. They get the greatest ice climber in the world to go there, big drill team. They go there, they, plan out this 1,000-foot drill to see this potential ancient pyramid of, in that area. Predators shoot a laser beam, drill the hole perfectly, 30 degrees, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And we get that, people go down there, start investigating, and we find out that it is a, big hodgepodge of every culture, that exists for thousands of years, stating that predators and aliens have been coming to Earth for thousands of years, at least 1,000 years, right? And in this, we learned that, the predators are using this base to lure humans in there, get, face huggers attached to them to create aliens because they are considered then the greatest prey that the predator can hunt. So predators are using humans as incubators to create their greatest adversary at this point in time. And just kind of, I think it's very more alien than predator side, but we found out in this movie that these predators are teenagers and they're going through a rite of passage. The rite of passage is to get their shoulder cannon, right? And just kind of just a showdown between aliens and predators if humans just happen to be there, just to be the host for the aliens, right?
Right.
Pretty. I mean, what were your expectations going into this movie when you first saw it?
Expectations. They weren't very high. Most of the time, when movie studios, they combine two things together, they usually combine the worst elements of those two things together, and they usually end up being terrible. So I was very, very skeptical about this movie coming in. Again, I was just worried about it. I mean, the previews looked okay, but again, there's, you could tell there was a lot of cheese behind it,
Right.
I was just hoping it would be the good kind of cheese and not the bad kind, but, I was very, very hesitant. I mean, it ended up turning out okay, but.
Yeah. I mean, it was my first Alien or Predator movie in theater for myself. Just because, first one before I was born, second, Predators wasn't old enough to go see it in theaters. And, I had, like I said, I had watched this stuff beforehand, and I had decent expectations going to see it. It was two franchises that they had previously set up in Predator 2. And I think it made a lot of assumptions. It changed, I feel, in my mind at that point in time, and the rewatches, tried to change the reason why predators were on Earth, right? In the predator aspect, they said that the alien xenomorphs are their greatest hunt, which kind of, I feel, dissuades or nullifies the first two Predator movies. What do you, or do you view it as this is the rite of passage for teenagers, and then when they prove themselves, then they go after man? Like they use, or do you say that aliens are more of a weaker species? That's why their teenagers are using it for the rite of passage, and then they become the great hunters in their society.
Well, I mean, I think that the aliens, I mean, the xenomorphs are supposed to be their ultimate prey, but what this test is supposed to be, I mean, this is, like you said, teenagers trying to pass a rite of passage. This is supposed to be a very controlled environment.
Right.
So yes, they're hunting the ultimate prey, but they're hunting a limited number in a very limited area, in an area that they know and that they can control. And the aliens are freshly born, right? So they're very new to this, and the predators are hunting them on their own territory with better tools. Again, there's 3 of them. There was only supposed to be a total of 7 aliens, and that was supposed to be it. There's glaring plot holes here. I'm going to try to stay away from the aliens side of these plot holes. Basically, I'll just sum it up saying the alien side is just a timeline issue. It's just they changed the canonical timeline for when things are born and things progress and things age. I'll leave it at that.
Right.
Now the Predator one, I think there's some glaring plot holes here. Is that I do kind of like the way that they say, oh, in the ancient world, thousands of years ago, predators were here and humans knew of them, right?
Right.
And they kind of worship them as gods, but more of just like I think the upper echelon of their society, right? That's kind of what it seemed to be. So like when they asked them like, hey, we need you to sacrifice yourself so that we can hunt, because this is our thing. This is how we get better. This is how we distinguish ourselves, as hunting this ultimate prey. Can you sacrifice yourself? And they did. And as they showed, like the corpses that were on those altars willingly did so. They said they weren't tied up. They were dressed up nice. This is an honor for them. Like they were all there and it was an honor. Now here's the glaring plot hole, is that the predators were going to that pyramid, right?
Yes.
Why would they think people were there? How are they going to hunt any aliens? This is in the middle of Antarctica. People aren't even supposed to be there. The best guide in the world was telling them they can't make it there because it's such a hard journey. Why would the predators, where are they going to get the people to put in there?
Because the way they act, like the last time was, in the universe time frame, this is 2004, right? And the last time was 100 years before that, when it was the whaling station. So they don't go there, and it's only every 100 years. Well, were people in Antarctica in 1804?
1804? I don't think so.
Right.
I think the big Antarctic expeditions were in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Right.
Yeah. So the whaling station is even kind of pushing it. And if you look at the whaling station, there's a lot of stuff there that was way later than 1904.
Right. But
like a lot of that metal work and stuff like that. That stuff was not like that in 1904. But whatever. That's just a nitpicky thing. I mean, I guess they could have been like, oh shit, there's no people here. I guess we'll have to go find some. I guess they could have done that. In my mind, it was very convenient that the people were there and the people got trapped in that room when the eggs were ready to go. It was just very coincidental, convenient for me. I guess it was just done to speed the plot along, but I thought that was a pretty big plot hole that they came here to do this whole thing, but they didn't have any people to be ready for it.
Well, I mean, if they're that far back, 1,000 years, people 1,000 years ago were not going to Antarctica. It's not like the island was that much closer to land at that point in time.
Yeah, but they also talked about in the movie that, and it actually is true, is that ancient maps show Antarctica as being green.
Right.
So what they were trying to insinuate is that this great civilization of the predators was probably on Antarctica before it froze over.
Okay.
And that's why no one has found the evidence of it existing, is because it's, like they said, whatever, 3,000 meters under the ice.
Right.
I think that's what they didn't explicitly say that, but I'm pretty sure that's what they meant by that, is that this great civilization that failed because obviously they showed, the pyramid getting overrun by, it looked like hundreds, maybe thousands of xenomorphs. So they just set off this huge nuke to kill them all, and then that kind of killed their whole, party on Earth. So then they just left, and then apparently they just came back every so often to hunt. And yeah, I think if the humans would not have gone in there and messed around with that pyramid, I think everything would have been fine.
Right.
They would have gone through their rite of passage as it was, but the humans went in there and they were looking at stuff and they opened up that sarcophagus and they took out the guns, the shoulder cannons, and that started the whole game, right? That started the whole game. So the predators weren't even inside the pyramid at that point. So they're already down because what the plan was, they go in there, they get their guns, they put the guns on, they get ready, and then they go in a controlled environment. Because it was shifting around so that it would trap the aliens in certain sections.
Right.
So that they can now go in there and hunt. But again, there was only supposed to be 7 of them.
And there's a team of like 20-ish?
Well, yeah, it was it very quickly got out of control. And it was way more than they were expecting. And they didn't have the weapons that they were supposed to have to fight them. So these guys were supposed to go there to learn how to fight the aliens with these shoulder cannons. And then they ended up going there to fight way more aliens than they expected without their guns. So they were like essentially fighting them with hand weapons, which, I mean, they did pretty good. I mean, in the beginning, they were not doing well at all because like one alien killed 2 of them immediately.
Right.
Like the first fight they got into, one alien killed 2 freaking predators. And then the third guy was obviously good enough to keep going. But yeah, so 2 of them failed immediately. But yeah, so I mean, I think they would have been fine. It would have been a normal rite of passage. I think everything would have been under control and they would have made it through if the humans didn't, set the thing off early and mess everything up. That's why everything got out of control. That's why everybody died.
Right. Do you think it contributed in any way to the Predator lore? Or do you think it gave us more insight into their society, seeing that they had different passages? They had like a teenage passage and they had proving grounds of leading up to hunt humans and other species.
I mean, yeah. I mean, they kind of. Well, I think they did expand it. I mean, it did add something. I'm just saying that I think the big expansions happened at the very end of Predator 2 when they showed that the aliens' skull and a skull of all these different animals, showing that this isn't just Earth. They do it everywhere. They do it all over the place. So, like, at that point, we already knew they go everywhere. They've been doing it for a long time. They kill all these different things and take trophies of them. So we already knew all that kind of stuff. It just adds some flavor into, the rituals of them. Like, they are stable enough to have, like, some kind of culture, right? Some kind of, like, they had a pyramid, a home kind of thing.
Well, they're a warring tribe, right? Like, they're like equivalent of the Spartans, I would say. That you assume every predator's that way, but it's not necessarily the case. We don't necessarily know that, but they are. Well, I mean, they pride themselves on their fighting skills.
Well, again, and that would be like us running through the forest as aliens. Picture we're aliens from another world, right? Yeah. And we come to Earth, and we're running around in the forest, and the only run-in we have with native people is a bunch of hillbillies with guns in the woods. Right. Like, to us, that's what all humanity is hillbillies running around in the woods with guns, right? So we leave the planet going, wow, those guys suck. All they want to do is kill everybody, Right. But obviously the whole rest of the world has a lot of different cultures, a lot of different kinds of people that aren't like that at all. But those are the only ones we experience. So, yeah, they might have a great grand society somewhere, and the only ones we see are the hunters coming out here, to be their trophy hunters. For all we know, they might be a tiny little subsection of their society, but since that's the only one we ever see, we just assume they're all like that.
Right.
So, yeah, who knows? I mean, it does bring a grander picture into it, especially at the end with, like Grandpa Predator coming out.
Right. Do you think it was worth the 14-year wait of the setup from Predator 2?
No. No, definitely not. I mean, again, it's not bad. It's not a bad movie. I don't hate it. I don't dislike it. I would say it's very average. It's just, like some of the places it went to, I was just kind of like, I don't really like that. But, some of the places it was interesting. It's like, they're trying to fill in gaps. They're trying to do interesting things. Again, I just have problems with.
Well, then let's get into the highlights and low points for you of this movie. Predator side. The Alien side's a whole other can of worms.
Predator side, the high point would be, that we get to see a little bit of their, culture. We get to see that they have like rituals, and these rituals are like thousands of years old, right? For these, younger predators to like, earn their chops, right? To earn their weapons, to earn their place.
Coming of
right?
age story.
Right. Yeah. So like, they get to like, so we show that they don't all just, hey, here's all your weapons, go out and hunt stuff. No, they have to like earn it, So there's obviously levels, there's obviously a hierarchy of some kind. I think that's interesting that it, fleshes that out and gives you a lot of flavor into, how they earn it and how they work. That there's, not necessarily honor, but some kind of sportsman like, right. Yeah. Something. Right. I think that's interesting. As far as the low point, I would have to say, because it's Paul W.S. Anderson, the way that he just kind of he takes something, right, and he's not necessarily pushing it too far, but I think he pushed it way too close to that line, to where I think he took too much of that franchise that he was like, he thought that he could control, like the Predators having a whole civilization here thousands of years ago. You know what I mean? Like that whole kind of thing. Like I get it. I just don't think it was necessary, and I don't like the way that he did that. So I like part of it because I like the ritual part of them earning it and them hunting, especially the hunting the aliens, their ultimate prey. But I don't like the way that he went all the way back just to have a backstory. I don't think it even needed that much backstory.
Right.
But I just felt like he took too far of steps in that franchise to make it his own, and I don't think it was necessary.
Yeah, highlights for me, the lore. I love good stories. I love lore. I like the world building. And that part was good for the Predator side. I think the low point is, quite honestly, I don't feel like. I guess there's precedent for it, like with Danny Glover being accepted as a part of the Predator clan, and the woman who's left alive at the end, being initiated into it. But I just don't know if I have ever seen the Predator as an ally of humans. I know they were fighting the enemy of my enemy, but I don't see any reason why necessarily, even when things got out of hand, that they would have kept any human alive. Because any alive human is going to be able to potentially be a host, create more aliens. So I think they would have killed any alive human to stop that from happening.
And that's fair. And I think, and most of the franchise, really, they do that. Even when they're fighting aliens and doing other things, most of the time they just at worst ignore humans, right? Just like, I don't care, you're useless, you're not going to help me, just get the hell out of my way.
Right.
Sometimes they get in their way and then they just kill them and brush them aside, because they're just in the way. But like otherwise they'll just ignore them. They don't care. That's not the purpose why they're there. And this one, I think the only reason why he actually cared, because the first time I watched it, I didn't get it either. I'm like, what is up with this? But this one, I didn't really catch it because they don't really force it. Usually they force those kind of things, but they forced it is that she saved his life.
Right.
Like he was going to be killed by that alien. Like he was going to be killed. If she didn't come by and stab it with that spear when she did, he would have been dead. And I think he recognized that. And I think that's why, obviously he didn't give her any of his weapons. Right. He didn't think of her. He didn't think that well of her, but he was like, okay, here, I'll give you a chance. Right. I'll show you that, this head works as a shield because you don't get burned by the acid. And then, here's a spear made out of its tail. Good luck. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't really, like, actively try to, like, fight back to back with her or anything. I think he just respected her enough that, she saved his life, that he was like, okay, I will give you a chance. Do you think that goes against their code? Do you think that goes against their thing? Because when they're in that state of loss, I think what they would have done is detonate and just blow it all to hell. And damn if she was there or not. Yeah, but not yet. But again, knowing the ending, they knew that all those grandpa aliens or the other predators were there.
Yeah.
They knew that the shit was not going to get that out of hand because they were being watched. So by blowing that shit up, he's just going to kill everyone and everything. And then he has no chance to get out. I don't think he ran out of chances to get out until he was literally right next to that fucking ship. Like, that's when he finally got, you know, the stab where he was like, ah, shit, I'm dead. But at that point, he was literally right next to the ship, and he knew that.
Okay.
Because in his visor, he can see the ship. Obviously, we didn't see through his eyes, so we didn't know that. But he knew the ship was right there. It sucks for him that he died right next to it. But, I mean, I don't think he had to blow anything up because he knew he was right there. But I think they set the precedence before is that when, you know, the humans show themselves as worthy, you know, whether because, you know, in Predator 2, Danny Glover showed himself as worthy by killing the Predator in hand-to-hand combat, right?
Right.
That to them is at least worth something. So they go, you know, here's an old gun, right? This is a trophy that I took, you know, you can have it now. And I think this one was, you know, because she killed an alien, and also she killed an alien in defense of that Predator, he gave her the mark.
Right.
On her cheek. Now, when that grandpa Predator saw that mark on her cheek, obviously he knew that other Predator gave it to her because, you know, she doesn't know their language. She doesn't know what that means.
Right.
So obviously she was marked, which means that she followed the rituals according to their code, which means she got out. Passed. She did what she was supposed to do. Right. That's why he gave her the spear. Right.
She passed the coming of age Predator test.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
And, you know, obviously she didn't come out with the shoulder cannon like she was supposed to, but because of, you know, they respected what she did, they gave her the spear. And they obviously didn't take her with, so they don't like her that much that they're going to take her with her or anything. But they respected it. You know, that's their level of their code, and they left.
All right. Well, for you, how many trophy skulls do you give this one?
I will give this one 6 out of 10 trophy skulls.
6 out of 10?
Yep.
I'm gonna have to go with 7. I liked it more than Predator 2, quite honestly.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Well, on average, I'm the same. Let's go with the same. I gave them both 7s, right?
Mm.
So the question is it horror?
It skirts that line, but I would say it's even less horror than Predator 2 is. Because most of it is just stuff happening. I mean, there's no like really lurking. Well, I guess there was, you know, the people were like running around in the little tunnels. There was a little bit of it, you know, when they were getting grabbed by the aliens and stuff. I mean, I guess that was part of it. So I guess so. I guess it's about the same level as Predator 2 then, now that I think of it. More action-y than horror, but elements of both.
I'd say it's more sci-fi than action. I think it's skirting the sci-fi horror more than action.
It's fair. Yeah, there's definitely the 3 elements involved.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's fair. I get that.
And to the next one. Alien vs. Predator Requiem.
Mm-hmm. Now, okay, I will say this. I did not hate it this time. I've only seen it twice in my life. Once was just recently today, and the other was when it came out. And I saw it in the theater when it came out, and I was very, very disappointed. And then I didn't watch it again. I tried to purge it out of my mind, and I didn't watch it again until today. And I will say it was not as bad as I remember it being, but it is still bad.
So let's brief synopsis of it is it picks up right where Alien vs. Predator takes off, right?
Okay, I will say this: it's an alternate world where this happens. Okay, because I'm sorry. I'll let you continue after I say this. At the very end of Aliens vs. Predator, the grandpa alien hands her the spear. They get in their ship. They fly away. Right? How many Predators were there? Like, I don't know, 15 maybe.
Oh yeah,
there's a bunch. There's a lot, right? And it was a big ass ship,
right?
And they brought that body onto that ship. That ship. We saw it happen,
right? And then we see the
doors closed. Yeah. Doors closed. It takes off. It goes into space. Now, 2 literally uses the footage from the first movie to show that that ship is in space. Now, how many people are on that ship now?
Isn't it just one?
Yeah, it's one person. There's one Predator and the dead body. Now, where those other 15 people went, how did the ship shrink? Because it shrank.
Right.
It was a giant ship, and now it's a tiny ship. So, like, yeah, whatever, you know, of course, even though, okay, there's so many things that upset me. I'm going to, do you want to just go through this first? Do you want me to just continue complaining, or do you want to go through the synopsis first?
We can go through the quick, stupid synopsis of this horrible movie.
All right.
So obviously, end of Alien versus Predator. You know, or he gets the face hugger on him, and we get the last scene is the chest burster, right, coming out of the Predator, and there's a couple alien Predators on the ship. This new hybrid Predator, alien Predator, if you want to call him. I think it's called the Alien Predator at this point in time, right?
It's called the Predalien.
The Predalien.
That's literally the name of it.
Wow.
It's the Predalien.
Wow, that's really dumb.
Yeah.
So it emerges very Predator qualities to this alien, which we can discuss with the alien thing. The aliens take over the shape of what they hatch out of, essentially.
Yes, it does have dreadlocks. Yeah,
so it has the face, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then essentially, because it's on that ship, makes the ship crash into a town, and so a cleanup crew essentially sees this happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they have to come clean up this mess of this event.
Mm-hmm.
And just more about humans, more about aliens and this stuff. Not necessarily a lot of Predator items, but I think that in this movie, especially with the town, getting split up, the government kind of knows what's happening with the aliens that are happening, kind of blow it up. And we really see a human use the hand cannon a lot as a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just more. It's just Alien versus Predator, but done worse for the second one. Like I don't know how else to describe the synopsis other than a town trying to survive the infestation of this creature, and the government's plan to destroy it, and then the cleanup crew from the Predators coming to clean up and get rid of anything else and kill this abomination to their culture or their species, right?
Right.
I mean, I don't know what else I can really say about the synopsis of this.
No, and that's fair. I mean, it's very, very simple.
It's very bland, generic.
Right. And then, okay, now I'm going to start complaining more. Now, so my first issue is obviously the ship is like they didn't understand the ship. I mean, there's very clearly at the end of Aliens vs. Predators, a lot of Predators on this ship. It's a big ship.
Right.
Now, they use the same footage, which means it's the same ship. And in the second one, all of a sudden now there's only a couple of Predators on this ship. Okay, that's this giant ship that shrinks because when it crashes on Earth, it is not big. It's a little. It's like one of their normal size ships, which is a single person ship. So I don't know. Again, just completely, broke the continuity there. 2, they already established in the earlier movies that they have X-ray vision and can see when an alien is inside of someone.
Yes.
Okay, so why would they leave a Predator's body that has an obvious alien inside of it when they can scan it very easily and see that in the open with no one watching it? I mean, they know this animal. They hunt it. They know everything about it. This is one of their major things that they hunt. It's a, ritual, it's the coming of age thing, all that kind of stuff. Why would they make that huge mistake? It doesn't make
They should have spaced it. Space the body.
Or put it in a jar. I mean, anything. They could have done anything except they left it on a table and walked away. Like literally, it's on a table in an open room. Like there's not even a closed door to where it is. It's just open hallways. It's stupid, ridiculous. So yeah. So all these Predators die, right? So this thing in its infantile state, which somehow grew immediately.
Right.
I mean, like it went from a chest burster to a full alien in 10 seconds.
Right. Yes.
So obviously we have the same problem as the first one, only more amplified, to where they don't understand the timeline that's supposed to be involved. And so this thing wiped out 3 aliens immediately in its infant state. Now, this guy, I mean, they don't even say who it is, this predator on this other world, like, gets a coded message. Right. Yeah. Looks like their city.
Right.
Gets this coded message that shows, oh, look, it's a pred alien that just wiped out multiple aliens, right? Yes. I'm going to go do this by myself. Like, you know that Earth is like one of your game preserves, right? You like multiple predators go there to hunt all the time. Like, if aliens get out and take over the planet, that totally fucks up your whole thing. There is no way in hell that they would only send one predator. There's no way that they would only send one. It doesn't make any sense. That makes no sense.
Unless he's the cleaner.
Unless he's the cleaner, and obviously by what happens in this movie, he's not. Right? I mean, he's good, but he gets his ass handed to him in almost every fight.
Yes.
You know, and it's not like they didn't know there was a pred alien there. They did, and I'm sure they've seen one before, because again, if they've been, as the first Alien vs. Predator establishes, they've been hunting xenomorphs for thousands of years. So at some point in time, would be the first time this
happened. Yeah.
Right. And they would know how dangerous it is. There is no way that they would only send one person there. Not dumb. Again, if there's 3 people hunting 7 aliens in a controlled environment, sorry, I kept calling them people, 3 predators fighting aliens in a controlled environment, right? And now you're going to where there's potentially hundreds, possibly thousands of these things. You said one dude. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Right.
Stupid. It just, again, there's so many dumb things about this movie. I mean, I don't think they watched the alien side of this at all. Like, at all. I mean, because, like, I get, they saw that, oh, when they take over somebody's body, they take on the characteristics of that. I think that's all. They just stopped reading at that point.
Right.
Because there's no queen, but somehow a male drone is able to, like, lay eggs through its mouth. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Only in pregnant women that we know of.
Well, how else would he have been able to keep doing it? Because there was only, like, 3 facehuggers that survived the crash.
Right.
So, like, they die immediately. They're one and done.
Right.
Like, they inject one and then they're done. So if they followed the normal rules of the alien universe, there would only be 4 total. And instead, they're all over the place. Like, but again, they show, like, weird stuff to where, like, when they grab people, they're just, like, stabbing them with their mouth, like their ejector mouths.
Right.
They're just, like, stabbing them, like they're doing it for fun. But it, like, I don't understand what they're doing. Like, if they don't understand the aliens at all. They're just, like, stabbing them. They're just, like, killing people that they don't need to kill for no reason. Like, aliens have always, like, they capture you and they wall you up. That's what they've always done. And this one, they don't. They just randomly murder people. And then they, like, somehow inject them with eggs, and, like, multiple eggs. And then those eggs hatch immediately. And then they grow up immediately.
Right. Which,
again, so it's like,
well, I mean, in fairness, if that's what happens with that species, then yeah, I mean, if that's actually what happens, right? If that's canonically what happens when you have a predator infected with an alien, that yes, they should send more than one cleaner. Absolutely. If that is the norm in the alien world, which is a whole other thing, right? Yes, I mean, from a predator standpoint, awful. From an alien standpoint, awful. Let's face it.
Well, I'd say the Predator. I mean, as far as, like, because I was trying to watch this just solely for the Predator aspect of it. I mean, it's so hard for me because I'm such a huge Aliens fan, and it just cuts in so hard on the Aliens stuff. But just watching it purely from the Predator side of things, they did a pretty decent job of keeping the Predators like what they should have been. Aside from not sending the right number of people to counter this threat. But, like, the way that Predator fights, the way that he kind of acts, he's pretty faithful to, like, the Hunter code, right? I mean, I think he
but
gives.
I would even say he's not a hunter in this. Like I said, he's a cleaner. That like it's almost like he's a different job in their species. Like he's not doing doing it to hunt. He's doing it to stop a spread of essentially disease at this point.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. He's not there for trophy skulls. He's there to kill the aliens. I mean, and that's fair. That's exactly. But aside from just taking it from that side of it, like he does a pretty good job of that. Like that's exactly what he does. He just keeps tracking. He keeps finding them. He keeps trying to kill them. The thing that strikes me is like if he's a cleaner specifically designed to clean aliens, he doesn't do a great job of that.
Right.
Like he gets his ass kicked by him like almost every time. I mean, yeah, usually he lives, but like he gets his ass kicked and then they get away.
Now, is this because this is the Versus faction and because it's two giant IPs that the ending had to happen the way it did? That once again, neither side wins of Alien or Predator.
Okay. Yeah, like I didn't remember that ending before, and I kind of like that ending because it's a bad ending.
Yeah.
And I like bad ending. I mean, obviously some of the people got away, and I didn't, I get that, but you don't expect all those people to die.
The entire town.
Right? Yeah, you don't expect the entire town to get evaporated. They didn't even really show them. They just show them get to the center of town, and then they just die. I mean, they're just completely wiped out.
The government pulls
the
crazies on them just to stop the spread of, like I said, disease, nuke it.
Right, yeah, they did the Raccoon City, which is, outbreak is out of control, just nuke it. And that's what they did. And again, that's what the government would do, and that's what they should do in that situation, right? You just don't expect it. You just don't expect it at all. I mean, some people did live, but yeah, they're probably going to be living in a lab for the rest of their life.
Right.
But,
so, I mean, do you think there's any highlights of this movie? Quite honestly. So I rewatched it. When I rewatched it last week, is probably my second time.
Yeah, I would, like I said, I tried to watch it solely through the Predator's eyes. And again, I'm trying to put blinders on to the Predator side of it. I would say that is a high point. I think they did a decent job with showing like this guy is here to eliminate these aliens. He's got the tools to do it, and he does it. I mean, yeah, a lot of people die as collateral, and he doesn't care, but that's not his job. He's not there to care. He's there to wipe this thing out. And as far as the Predator side of things, I think they did a good job, aside from, the glaring things that I've already brought up. But other than that, I thought they did a pretty good job on the Predator little slice of that. Obviously, the low point for me is just the horrible use of the aliens. I mean, just completely subverting everything that's been established in all the movies prior to that. Just completely out the window. But yeah, that's my low point.
I think if he was going to do this alone, as the soul cleaner of the species, that he would want, once he saw the out of controlness that happened, that he might give up weapons. He might arm the humans to help fight and stop this. If we were able to see, in the last Alien versus Predator, they go, hey, we need to team up and stop this queen from escaping. You think they would do the same thing? Like, it's just humans surviving this outbreak. Like I said, put in any disease, put in anything else in terms of aliens for diseases like the crazies or the stand or anything else. Like, if there's a way to stop it, I feel the Predator would have done it. Like, he should be able to have assessed the situation and armed the humans to stop them.
And I think that's fair, but I think in his mind, if you kind of, watch it just on his little slice of it, I think he still thought he had shit under control up until that fight on the roof.
Okay.
I think he was like, I've had some setbacks, but I'm still doing okay. I'm still killing a lot of aliens. I still got my weapons, or I still got some weapons. I'm doing okay. I'm doing good. And I don't think he really realized what was going up or what was going to happen to him until he was fighting that thing on the roof and realizing that he was not going to win. And I think that until that point, I think he saw humans as not helpful to him. they were just going to be in his way. Like he didn't need their help because he thought he had it under control.
Once again, you think he would have killed the humans to stop the spread?
Oh, I don't think he. Again, they show that he knows he has the X-ray vision. He can tell who's been infected and who hasn't. And in this movie, I mean, the time taken to gestate it, that the facehugger is like so short that like basically they're either, if they are infected, they're going to be dead in 10 minutes anyway.
Right.
So like that window of being infected is so small that it's pointless to even think that. Like if a human is alive, 99.9 repeating chance that they're fine. So I don't, again, following this established timeline of the aliens happening in the first movie and in this movie, and how short that timeline is, I don't think he would have cared. Eventually it might have gotten to that point, but again, wiping that out is you're killing all these potential people that you could be hunting later.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's like a rancher, like a rancher with cattle. Like if you got, cattle that are sick, are you going to kill all of them? I mean, sometimes they do.
Right.
But you're going to try to quarantine them. You're going to try to just get rid of the sick ones and keep the rest of them because that's a lot of money. That's your livelihood.
Right.
And I think, they were probably trying to do some version of that. And I think he thought he had it all under control until that fight on the roof when he decided to go 1v1, hand to hand with the thing and then realized that he was not going to win.
Do you think that predator should have lived instead of being wiped out by humans?
No, because he wasn't that good. I mean, honestly, if he's a guy he's supposed to be so good that he's like, they only send one dude to wipe out all of these aliens and he gets his ass kicked like that. Yeah, they need a new cleaner. I mean, that's just survival of the fittest.
All right. So trophy skulls for you.
Again, there are more, bright spots than I remember there being. Like I said, just concentrating on the Predator side and the bad ending, which I do love. We'll bring it up from what I originally thought the score was going to be. I'll bring it up to 4. It'll be 4 out of 10 trophy skulls.
3 or 4 for me. I'm gonna go with 3. I could not, like, really did not want to watch this movie again.
Yeah, I was dreading it too.
Like I saw it in theaters. I'm like, at that point in time, like this has got to be the worst movie in theaters that I paid money for that I've ever seen in theater at that point in my life.
That's fair. That's a fair statement.
I'm just like, I don't know if I ever want to watch this again. Like, like when the Blu-rays came out and I got the Aliens, I got the Predators, I go, I'm not getting this. This is not being a Blu-ray collection for me.
I don't think I have the Aliens vs Predators. I don't think I have either one of those on Blu-ray. If I do, I only have the first one. I know for a fact I've never gotten the second one.
So, is it horror?
I would say there's elements of the human side of that would be horror. Like in the beginning when the infection was first starting, there's definitely some horror elements there, Again, not as much. I would say it's probably about the same level as the first one. The humans were around in little tunnels, get hunted by aliens. I would say it's about on the same level. So, again, sci-fi, it's going to be the sci-fi action horror. I'd say it's more action than sci-fi than horror.
If I'm looking at this from, like I said, compared to the standard of the crazies, if I took this as a zombie outbreak or outbreak movie, it's pure horror. Because if you treat the aliens as that infection, as a disease, and people not knowing who's infected right away, and you're bringing people with you who might spawn one of these creatures that can kill you, to me, that's pure horror. That's a big storyline in a lot of horror movies.
And that's fair. And you know what? I think if they would have kept the original timeline from the Aliens movies where, the gestation could take days. Yeah. That's a very fair statement because, you don't know. Are these people infected? Are they not?
Right.
We don't have a way to, we'd have to put them in a medical thing and give them an MRI to see. But again, since they shortened the time so much, it's like if you let them stand there for 15 minutes and they don't die, they're not infected.
Right. I mean, if they span it out properly, it could have been just a disease movie. It could have been a plague type movie. And the ending is one.
Yeah, that's fair. Like I said, I think it would have been much better if they kept the original timeline and then slowed it down a little bit.
Right.
Like it was like as soon as the wheels touched the road, it was like going 100 miles an hour the whole time. But again, they didn't want to stop that momentum. That's why it's like, oh, let's shorten the gestation time. Let's shorten the maturation time of these aliens. Just 15 minutes each. So like time of implantation to a full grown alien is like what? I mean, there's instances in the movie where it's instantaneous.
Right.
It's like immediate. Right. But I would say like probably 5 minutes?
5-10 minutes, absolutely. Like they get the face hugger, they wake up, they die.
Right. Yeah, it's like it's ridiculous. If they would have kept the original timeline, I think it would have been a much better movie. Slow it down a little bit, give it some tension, give it some suspense.
Yeah,
I think it would have been much better. I definitely would think it would have been a better horror side of
it. It had the groundwork for it, just executed poorly.
Correct.
All right,
I'll agree with that.
Predators.
Predators.
You want to do the synopsis on this? I know you love this.
Yeah, movie. I'll do this. I love this movie. Again, I love this storyline. I love the storyline. There's a lot of movies and shows that do this, but the storyline where there's a bunch of people that they don't know each other. They wake up in a place that they are unfamiliar with, and they have to try to figure out who these people are, why you're there, what's going on, that kind of thing. I just love that storyline. It's great. Anyway, so a bunch of people, essentially wake up mid falling from the sky. And realize that, they're falling to Earth or the ground. And, a parachute, pops up and they land. Now, they are fully armed. They're still wearing armor. They have bullets. They have guns. Everything is there. And it ends up being 8 of them. I think there's 8 total, right?
Yeah.
There's supposed to be more, but some of them died falling. There's the one guy. Yeah, there's a couple of them that died, so there's probably supposed to be, at least 10. But anyway, there ends up being, 8 of them that survive, and you got all the different kinds of people. You got the typical American mercenary guy. You got the, Israeli Defense Forces sniper lady. You have the Russian, the Chechen Russian counterinsurgency guy with a minigun.
Yep.
You got the cartel assassin. This is Danny Trejo.
Yep.
You have the convict, Walter Goggins.
Serial killer.
Yeah, you have Topher Grace, the serial killer. You have the Yakuza dude, the Japanese Yakuza dude. Then you have Mahershala Ali as the African, death squad guy.
Right.
I think that's 8, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's 8. So that's all of them. So, I mean, it's a fantastic cast. I mean, again, you got, Mahershala Ali before he was anybody. Was playing a stereotypical African accented guy, which I think is funny for him because he's a fantastic actor and he's very held back by this role, but still funny to see him in such a small role. But yeah, everybody else is huge. I mean, Adrian Brody. Alice Braga has been in a lot of stuff. Walter Goggins has been in a ton of stuff. I mean, I think he's bigger now than he was at that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a character. I mean, Danny Trejo. Everybody knows who Danny Trejo is. Topher Grace. I mean, everybody knows who
good old Larry Fishburne.
Oh, well, yeah, but he's not one of the people that falls from the sky. But he does show up later. Yes. But yeah, fantastic cast. I think everybody plays their role really, really well. And essentially, it follows the same Predator thing. We're like, okay, let's try to figure out where we are, where are we going, and they're slowly figuring out that they're not on Earth. Right? They're like, okay, we are not on Earth. Eventually they get to a high ground and they see that there's different planet alignments and stuff. The sun never moves from its spot in the sky, so it's always daytime. There's a lot of things pointing to this but not being Earth, but it takes them a while to figure it out. And then almost immediately when they figure it out, dogs start chasing them around.
Right.
And they do manage to take the dogs out. They do lose one that the cartel guy, goes down. And then, as they figure that out, they're and then he gets like his body's like trapped, and say, hey, don't try to help him. This is an obvious trap. They throw the rock out there. They see that it's a trap. And then they basically figure out like, okay, we're being hunted. Like we are here to be hunted. Like we're the prey. Right. And then at the end of that, and of course, because they're smarter, soldiery type people, they kind of try to push it back on them. So they go back to their camp and they see that there's the predator is like tied up. I'm like, what is that? What is that? Like a pole or a monument? Yeah, something like that, right? And he's a predator that looks very much like the predator did in the first two movies.
Yep.
Basic armor, all this stuff. He looks like that. So they have a little bit of a showdown. Doesn't go very well.
Yeah.
And they ended up leaving. And at that point, there's not that many of them left. I think, who did they lose in that fight? I think they lost to Mahershala Ali, and then
they lost the Yakuza guy Flame before they get to.
What?
No, it's not. No, they didn't lose him there. Yeah,
because they lost Danny Trejo when the dogs came. I think they lost Mahershala Ali when they went back to the camp.
Yeah, they lost him there. He was the bait.
Right.
But the Yakuza, the Russian, Topher Grace, they all meet up with Larry Fishburne after that.
Right. Yeah, they meet up with Larry Fishburne. Larry Fishburne is the survivor who's been there. He doesn't. You don't really even know how long he's been there because he's crazy.
Do we lose Walter? Do we lose Walter at that? Do we lose Walter at that point?
No, he makes it all the way through this thing. Okay. He makes it all the way through to the very end of this. And so, so he's like talking to himself, and he's obviously like goofy. He's been there for a long time. I think the one really interesting thing that I like about him is like he has a predator mask and he can turn on the invisibility and stuff. And he has like guns and shit. So obviously he's been there for a long time. Looks like he's scavenged a bunch of shit. But if you look at the predator mask, what is holding it on his head is an old samurai helmet.
I did not see that.
And then, yeah, that's an old samurai helmet that it's holding. I mean, it's the predator mask in the front, but what's holding it on his head is the rest of that is an old samurai helmet. And then obviously the Yakuza guy finds the katana that's in there.
Right.
And he says it's really old, which means that they've been bringing people to this game preserve for what? I mean, if you go at the end of the samurai era, you're talking, mid 1800s.
Yeah.
So at the very least, they've been bringing people to this planet to hunt them since the mid 1800s. Probably longer than that, but they still had samurai up until about that point in time. They're there. Larry Fishburne betrays them, tries to steal all their shit, and he ends up screwing himself and gets killed. And they're trying to get out of this place because it's like a big, like a big drill machine or something that they're hiding in? Something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
But anyway, they're trying to get out of this big machine. Topher Grace gets separated from him and, it's like running around screaming like an idiot. And so the Russian guy goes back to help him. Topher Grace ends up getting out. Russian guy ends up dying, protecting him. When they get out, the one predator attacks them, and that's when Walter Goggins jumps on his back and starts shanking him.
Oh, yep.
And then he dies very shortly after that. So then they get away, and then it's at that point and as they're running away, the Yakuza guy with his newfound katana decides to buy them time for them to get even further away. So he stops and has like a 1-on-1 sword fight with one of the predators, which was pretty cool. I like that part.
Yeah, he wins.
So they end up killing it.
I mean,
yes. Yeah. Well, it's a
he kills
victory,
the predator.
But yes, yeah. Right. Yeah, they kill each other, but at least he took a predator out. So at that point, by the time they come back around, because then they go back to the camp, because they come up with the idea that basically they're going to cut down that other predator and get him to fly their ship out of it, right? Because Larry Fishburne gives them the idea that, they have a ship. How else do you think they're getting here? So they're trying to get away. So at that point it's Adrian Brody, Isabel, the sniper, Topher Grace, and is that it? Okay, I think everybody else has died up until that point. Anyway, yeah. So they get there. Um, yeah, like Adrian Brody cuts the guy down. Um, that guy turns on the ship or whatever, and sends it to leave. And Adrian Brody runs away to the ship, and then the other Predator, who's the only one left. There was 3 of them, and now there's only one of those left, and so the classic Predator fights that guy. And they're duking it out, and eventually the classic Predator leaves, and then the other guy looks up, sees the ship leaving, and then just blows it up, just like remote control blows it up. So at that point, Alice Braga, Topher Grace, they fall into like a pit, right? It's like a pit trap thing. And they're stuck like in there, and then that's when, right? And then that's where, because up until this point, everybody was like, well, Topher Grace is just this nerdy doctor, right? Like everybody else is like a trained killer, right? A trained soldier. Like he's the oddball. Why is he here? And you find out that he was a serial killer. And he stabs her with this poison stuff that paralyzes her. She can't talk, she can't move, nothing. And he's like, giving his kind of villain monologue. And then Adrian Brody comes back.
Yeah. Preparing her to make her a trophy kill for him.
Right. Yeah. He's now trying to be the Predator. So he's gonna, kill her as his trophy, whatever. So Adrian Brody comes back. They thought he was dead, but he comes back, and then Topher Grace is shocked. Alice Braga is obviously trying to communicate with her eyes what is happening, but she can't talk. So he pulls them out. And she's kind of paralyzed, and then of course Topher Grace tries to come at Adrian Brody from behind, and Adrian Brody deflects it easily, kills him. And then he goes Arnold, he puts on the mud,
right?
and he fights the alien, hand to hand, or whatever, and then he wins. Game over.
Right.
End of movie. And then they're gonna try to get away. The next.
Well, they see more parachutes dropping. So the next season already started.
Right, but I mean, it does show that some time has passed, because at that point they have their gear and clothes and stuff back on. So they don't really say how long it's been, but it's been some time from the end when they see those parachutes coming down. But so at that point they've now taken over the Larry Fishburne role of being the survivor,
right?
And they're going to be on the next cycle.
So, I mean, this is. I thought this was a fantastic movie. I thought it was a good return to form after the 2 AVPs that we had. And I really liked it. I really liked that, and the fight with the Predator, and the Predator that was tied up was smaller than the other Predators they were facing. So there's like different races in the same species of the Predator that they were even hunting their own weaker species of themselves, right? I think that Adrian Brody using the mud was a good callback. I think, and then using fire to have the flare-ups for the heat signatures to help hide himself too was something that had never been done either. And I think that was really smart for him to do. The classic storyline that we're going to discuss in a future episode of people waking up not knowing where they are, trying to figure things out. Great storyline. This had a twist. The twist was Topher Grace's character. Being the silent serial killer, the everyman guy, right? That to me just seemed really weird that he would try to do this in the middle of this movie.
Well, I mean, he's been put through a lot, man. I mean, it's as somebody that, obviously back in the world, if you're a serial killer, you're in a good deal of control, right? Like you can control your environment. You're the one that's on the hunt. And now he's been flipped completely around to where not only is he being hunted, but he's like the weakest of the group being hunted. So like, he's like, the one that's probably going to be the first to go. So yeah.
Do you think it was just a way to control and try to prove that he is on par with the Predator that they were facing?
Yeah, and that's part of it. And I also think it's like, he can see that it's getting to an end, and he doesn't, at that point, I don't think he thinks anybody's going to survive. So he's just trying to
be himself.
I guess be himself, or kind of be, the worst version of himself that he wants to be before he gets cut out. I think.
Well, because Adrian Brody doesn't kill him, but he lands him with grenades, and he tried pleading, saying that they're exactly alike. Which I would say that the way he kills is not to the code of the Predator, so he would never be on par with them. Adrian Brody, yes. Topher Grace's character, no.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming. Well, we don't know, who his victim type is, but we do know that he's a serial killer of some kind. But again, if going by all serial killers, is probably attacking defenseless people of some form or another. So yeah, I mean, again, I can see him having delusions of grandeur, thinking that he's on the same level, but yeah, definitely not. And I think it's a fitting end.
So, what are your highlights and low points for this movie?
Highlights is again that ensemble cast, how they have all these unique people, and each one of those unique people have their moment. You know what I mean? You get to see who those people are. Even if it's a little bit, but you get little windows into these people's lives and what they're all about. Like they might be killers, right? They might be, got high kill counts and stuff like that. But, they got human sides of them too, right? They're not all monsters.
Right.
I mean, except for Topher Grace, of course. But you don't see that. He acts like the kind of out of place, nerd for most of it and doesn't show that face until the very, very end. So that's, I mean, definitely the high point to me is just, how good those characters are, how fleshed out and interesting and fun they are. I mean, I like when they have, ensemble casts like that. The low point of it, I'm trying to think. I mean, I like most.
Do you think there is a low
movie.
point?
I'm trying to. I mean, I'm sure there is. I think some of the callbacks that they did were a bit cheesy. I mean, I thought they were good. I mean, but I can see how people would think they're a bit more cheesy than than they would have liked. I could see that. I'd say if there is any low point, that would be one.
Yeah. For me, highlight is I feel that this movie showed us more of what we discussed of how humans are predators and how we hunt. I think we gave the predators that same aspect. We saw their camp they reside at. We saw their habitat. We saw them deploying the same skills and traps that we would as humans going after prey. They have their dogs that flush out the prey first to hunt them, right? I think that was a very good, kind of the best way of showing them that, yeah, to that point, they are like us. They're just a different species.
Right. Yeah. I think, that's the cool thing about the title is Predators is that, it's both groups. Right. Yeah. It's both groups are predators. They are, of their own, in their own way. But yeah, I mean, it's very fitting. I like the, it's just a good movie. I like it a lot.
Low point. I'm not sure. I mean, everyone kind of went out there. I would say Danny Trejo, not that himself, but the way his character went out, because he was really the first one. We didn't really get to see his background enough. I feel like everyone else was more flushed out as a character, and everyone else kind of got to have their moment of glory, if you will, and he didn't.
Yeah, I can see that. But I mean, at that time, especially around, the time that this movie came out, everybody knew who Danny Trejo was. Right. And everybody knew what Danny Trejo was all about. And I think they kind of let that reputation sell him on his character. And I think that's why they didn't bother doing that. I mean, obviously he was the first one that died. So, I mean, you're not going to get a whole lot fleshed out there. But I think, he was, probably the most stereotypical character out of them all.
Right.
And I would say that, it was very easy to kill him off first because everybody basically knew what he was about from the beginning.
All right. So, number of trophy skulls out of 10 for you on this one.
This one, I will give it a 9 out of 10 trophy skulls just because I don't want to give it the same score as the original Predator. So I'll put it just a tiny bit under. I'm going to go with 10. I really, really like this movie. I
like it just as much as the original, if not more so, because it's not. Yes, it's action, but it's more horror for me than action. It's not just shooting a tree for 5 minutes type action, right?
Yeah, no, I definitely, I would agree with you. This one is definitely, I would say, probably the most horror out of all of them. Is that, I mean, from the very beginning, I mean, yeah, they're all armed and stuff. I mean, they all look like they're tough and soldiers, but it's pretty obvious from the very beginning that it doesn't matter.
Right.
Like, you're going to be picked off regardless. Like, you think these weapons are going to help you, and they're not. Like, you're just, it's just this unknown thing is hunting you and chasing you. And not only that, but like, even other people are also your own, humans are also hunting you and fucking you over too. So yeah, like everybody is on edge the whole time. And yeah, that's why I'd say definitely more horror than
every one of the characters could have been their own star of a horror movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Give it that.
All right. So that kind of answers whether it's horror or not. It's definitely really good. So
yeah, I mean, it's got, I mean, the sci-fi and the action elements, but I would say in this version, out of the three, I would say horror is probably number one, just because of they're being hunted the entire time.
Right. All right. So next we come to The Predator.
Right.
So brief synopsis. So this movie is, I have got the guy's name, the actor's name.
Shane Black.
No, Shane Black wrote this, but the main guy in this, who's in the Sandman. He's Drithian.
Yeah, he was the right.
So he's in Mexico, South America, Central America area, and he's a elite sniper, is on a mission, kills a guy, but then there's also a predator there who kills his buddy, and he is able to kills this predator, right? Or does he capture it?
The predator?
Yeah.
He doesn't do anything.
Okay, but he gets
he steals stuff, but gear. He doesn't capture it.
So
right,
he gets the gear, the arm piece, and the shoulder cannon and the helmet. Ships it to he swallows the invisibility ball, and he ships the rest to his son with his estranged wife. He gets picked up, gets brought in, and is being questioned by the government and the agency. Can't think of the actor's name right now. That's in This Is Us.
Oh, I don't think I know his name.
Yeah, I know him from Supernatural, but he's interrogating him, and he gets put into essentially like a support group, psychiatric group on a bus. They capture the predator. We have Ace Busey, Gary Busey's son, kind of looking at the predator. They bring in scientists to go over the alien and see it does look familiar. They have lots of big hints to the past events, especially the first predator that this happens to. Olivia Munn's character. The predator escapes, and so they're trying to hunt it and figure out what's going on. Then the bigger predator comes down, or is that the predator that escapes, that has human DNA in it, and it's like the ultimate version of the predator, right?
Well, the one that they captured, the one that he stole the mask and stuff, that's the one with the human DNA.
Okay.
The other one, the big one, they never test because he never gets captured.
Right. So he's the one that's ultimate, right? That they're figuring out that they're taking the species that they hunt and extracting their DNA and injecting themselves with it to become the ultimate predator, I would say, right?
Something like that.
And so you have the ragtag group of screw ups that nobody wants. They're dishonorably discharged from the military that are still part of it, though. And they start getting picked off. Trying to go against the government agency, a lot of shooting and killing each other on both sides, and then trying to kill this ultimate predator. We see a different type of predator dogs in this one. And go
with dreadlocks.
With dreadlocks, yes, this time that almost have like human-ish faces more so than the last one, though, like spikes everywhere from the predators. series. And the Predator is trying to get his stuff back from the kid, so therefore, we get a kid injected into the story. We have a scientist that's able to do lots and lots of things, like also know how to shoot guns, run as fast as a Predator. And the twist ending is the first Predator that they had was trying to give humanity a tool to protect themselves against predators. Can you think of anything else to add to that synopsis, or is that pretty?
Well, I'll add in that the reason that he was coming to give them a tool to fight against predators is because the predators had apparently found out that they were destroying the planet, from like whatever climate change and stuff like that, so that the planet wasn't going to be livable for much longer. So they were going to come and start harvesting people en masse because they knew that the planet was going to die soon. So that's why they came to give them the thing now instead of the thousands of years they've been hunting them in the past, is that apparently they were going to come and I guess more or less like exterminate humans, trying to pull all the DNA that they possibly could, because they know that humans were an endangered species and would be out the door.
Or destroying ourselves.
Correct.
Right. So a big, social commentary built into that movie.
Correct.
I did not see this in theaters, and I really did not watch this until the rewatch for this podcast. Did you see this in theaters by chance?
I did.
You did. All right, so
I was very, very excited for this movie when it first came out because, again, Shane Black, who directed this movie and wrote it, or I should say co-wrote it, but he was heavily involved in the Predator franchise in the very beginning. Like he was the script doctor, he was an actor, and he was like, the director's, watchman. And the first one, like he knew what the Predator franchise was supposed to be all about. Like he was involved in the second one as well. So I was very excited that it was going to be, good. Because obviously Predators was the last one to come out, and that one was fantastic. And now Shane Black is coming in, and I saw these, all the names attached to this movie. I was like, oh, I was very excited. Thomas Jane is in it, like Alfie Allen's in it. Keegan Michael Key is in it. There's a lot of
K. Brown. Yeah.
Olivia Munn. I liked Olivia Munn a lot at the time. Yvonne Stratsky's in it. I liked her a lot.
Yeah, and the main guy Quinn is Boyd Holbrook.
Okay. I've seen him around. I don't think I ever knew his name.
Yeah, because he was in Logan as the main villain in that.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was. Yes, he was. Donald Pierce, right?
Yeah.
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 Good call. So I was very, very excited. So yeah, I went and saw it. And I think it's just a lot of wasted potential. I say this a lot, and I feel very strongly in this, is that some filmmakers, as they get families and mature and move on, they try to build a lot of that into their movies. I think very unnecessarily. I think the whole child storyline is very out of place.
Right.
I don't understand what they're doing there. There's the whole weird kind of subtext that because the kid has autism.
Right.
And that the whole autism is the next stage of evolution, and somehow this big giant predator wants that kid's genes because he's the next stage in human evolution. Right. It's bizarre. I don't understand that whole subplot. I don't know why it's there. It needs to just go away.
Well, at the end of the movie, they had the kid able to decipher their code, their language, and figure out how to get the predator killer suit out and figure out what it was, right? And they had this now we have the suit, we're going to be able to become the predators and go hunt them, right?
Yeah, and to be fair, that suit looked really cool.
Right.
That was an awesome looking suit, and I I would like to see the more of that suit, but again, it's just again, obviously, I have no problem with people with autism or even people with autism in stories. I just think it's unfair to them that a lot of Hollywood people or even a lot of media in general, it's like, oh, this person has autism, like, oh, they're really good at math. Like they always put these like goofy skills that they're able to like decode, decryption on hardware files, and they can decode languages in a second. Oh, you can count toothpicks on the floor in a second. Like that's not autism. Like autism, I mean, sure, there's a tiny little sub percentage of people that are able to do that, but a lot of times in media and movies they try to force like all people with autism to like have these weird super abilities. Like, yeah, they're out of place and awkward. Like the kid can't stand loud noises,
which is very common,
and stuff like that. Right. I mean, stuff like that is common, right? But they push this thing like it's it's Rain Man. Like, yeah, Rain Man is very, very difficult to deal with. He's got a very set routine. You can't do certain things around him, and you can't force him into certain situations. But like, oh, he's really good at math, and he can cheat at gambling, so it's all okay.
Right.
Like he's got a fancy skill, and it's unfair that they do that in a lot of things. And again, that's why I don't like this storyline, because it's like it's not fair to the kid. It's not fair to people with autism that everybody assumes that in Hollywood they have magic powers because they have autism.
Right, and I know kids in movies and stuff like that. That just being a kid and adding that to the movie, I don't think it added anything to it. It didn't. I have a family, and I don't want to see necessarily that in a movie. That's just, what I mean. Like I don't like that it was in that plot. It's just a kid.
Yeah, right. I agree, and it's again, as aside from that weird notion that they're harvesting people, to make sure that they can inject themselves with DNA for their own next evolution. Oh, and then autism is the next, human evolution. So therefore they'd want this kid with autism.
Right.
Which is, it's bizarre. I mean, again, how would the Predator have any idea that kid had autism?
Right.
How would the Predator have any idea that kid was able to decode stuff?
But like, I feel like that was Quinn's main story, was he was a dad. Like that was his character development.
Right. Yeah. He definitely didn't get better as a person.
No, he didn't like the group he was with. He made fun of them for being outcast and having problems with a lot of them. I just don't feel like he's a very likable guy.
I don't know if I got that vibe from him. I mean, I thought that, again, in that group, I thought they had really cool chemistry. Like, I liked that group of people. I thought there was a lot of like funny stuff that actually like hit. Like they were like, I thought they played well with each other. A lot of the goofy jokes and stupid things that they said were like actually funny, and I thought they did a great job. Like I said, that group, the adult group, was great, and I thought he was good. He played a good like straight man in that group. You know what I mean? I thought they all kind of played well with each other. Again, the whole kid subplot. Again, I've given reasons why I don't like it. Not only that, I just don't like kid subplots in action sci-fi horror movies in general. But really not like it for the goofy reason that they put it in this movie. I don't like Olivia Munn, how she's like super Mary Sue and all of a sudden knows how to do everything.
That she can run, she can fight, she can shoot a gun as better than everyone else.
Right. I mean, yeah, she's like, by the end of the movie, she's like in full body armor, just like shooting assault rifles with everybody else. Like, why is she there? She's a scientist. Like, obviously she doesn't, I guess they didn't specifically say that, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that she didn't have any military training. Right.
Right.
Because like they brought her to this base and she'd obviously not been in any kind of like military discipline thing. Right. She's never dealt with that before by the way she's acting.
Right.
Yeah, and like all of a sudden, yeah, she's able to like. I mean, yeah, they had like a few goofy things, like she shot herself in the foot with the
tranquilizer,
the tranquilizer thing. But that was no fault of her own. It was because the van or the bus moved. Right. But yeah, like I didn't like how they just gave her all these like all of a sudden she has all these skills. Like there's these guys who are elite soldiers and been doing it for years, and all of a sudden now they're on par with this scientist who like just got into the game. Yeah, I didn't.
Would you say that's the lowest point like for you of the movie? Which of those?
Yeah, I'd say between those 2 points, I would definitely say that's the low point. I would say the high point is that group. I thought they did really well with each other. Like I liked those characters. Again, I'm a big fan of ensemble, casts and characters. I don't think they fleshed them out too much. There's a couple of them that had like their moments, like Keegan Michael Key and Thomas Jane's character. They had a bit
right
of fleshing out. But I would say, I don't think any of the other ones did.
No.
Well, Nebraska did a little
right.
bit. Well, at least we got to know more of his story. But yeah, like the other ones, there was not really much development there. They were just there, and again, they played well. Like I said, I thought the chemistry between them was great. That's why I think if that whole goofy kid subplot wasn't there, and they actually just like moved forward with like them trying to get the Predator without the whole goofy trying to find the kid with the Predator mask on Halloween storyline, like just get that whole thing out of there, fighting Predator dogs in a baseball field or whatever they were. I mean, it was, again, it just dumb, pointless, like injecting children into movies they don't need to be in.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd say that, those are my highs and lows.
Yeah. My highlight is, as far as the Predator was concerned, it was more return to form that we had in the first 2. It was back to Earth. That wasn't this goofy Alien versus Predator, right? It was more of Predator coming to our planet, and we're fighting it to just stop it. Low point, realistically for me, was the essentially lobotomy by bullet to one of the dogs. And all of a sudden it became like this likable dog.
To be fair, it wasn't a bullet.
What was it?
It was one of those pneumatic guns that they use to kill cows at slaughterhouses.
Okay. Well, but the same thing.
Yes, it's the same thing. I'm just poking you.
It was like all of a sudden we have this big goofy animal in this. Like, this is weird. Like, this doesn't fit. Along with a whole bunch of other things, obviously. And what did you think of something we didn't talk about? We had it in Predator, Predator 2, and Predators, but not the changing of the words. You're one ugly motherfucker, right? But she goes, "You're one beautiful motherfucker."
But then somebody else said ugly later on.
Yeah. I mean, so trophy skulls for you on this one.
The trophy skulls on this one, I'll give it 5 out of 10 trophy skulls, meaning it is better than Requiem, but I think that's the only movie it's better than. I think all the rest of them are better than that.
5 is fair. I'll give it a 5 as well. Mm-hmm. Second worst, I think.
Yeah. No, I mean, all the elements were there. It could have been good. I just think they tried to add a bit too much. And I think it took away from the things that could have been great. I think got, take their luster got taken away by putting in these goofy subplots that I think leached a lot of the life out of the movie. I think it could have been much better, but I don't think it was horrible, but it could have been so much more.
Okay. All right. And on to our final film of the franchise. It's once again a spoiler alert for anyone that hasn't seen it. Prey. Want to give us a quick rundown?
Yeah, sure. So, we're back to 1700s. This is natives in the Americas. I don't know if they say. I think they're Comanches, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if they say like exactly the area that they're in. I'm going to say in the center because the other people that they come in contact with are French, and the French primarily had the center of the Americas locked down. So I'm going to go ahead and say it was Louisiana.
There you
go. I don't know, but anyway, it's somewhere that it's a nameless place anyway. There's these native people. There's this girl who is kind of trying to get outside of her role. I mean, the traditional native role for women is to like be the medicine people or be caretakers, that kind of thing. Right. Stuff like that. So she doesn't want to be that. She wants to be the hunter. Right. So she goes out and, she shows skill. She's got the skill for it. They just, nobody wants to let her do it. So she's going to go out and prove herself. So in order to prove herself in their tribe, you have to go and fight and kill something that is dangerous to humans.
Right.
So they don't specifically name it. It just has to be something that's dangerous to you, like a bear, like a lion, whatever stuff, something like that. So she's like, going out to try to find that stuff. So they hear that there's this lion that's like attacking people, that attacked other members of their tribe. So, they send out a group to go find them, and she sneaks off and joins them. They try to send her back, but no, she's like, no, I'm going to stay here. I want to do this. And they're like, okay, fine. So, as they're tracking this lion, a couple people get injured. They have to go back. It basically ends up just being her and her brother. Her brother is like, the best hunter in the tribe, I would say, or at least the best hunter that we see.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like, her and him are basically, hunting this cat. Looks like a mountain lion, a cougar or something. And she ends up wounding it pretty badly, but she does fail, falls out of a tree, knocks herself out, and doesn't end up killing the cat, but her brother does. So, they go back to the camp. The brother is all like rewarded, and he's made like the war chief, not the chieftain of the tribe, but the war chief of the tribe, and he gets like his special stick and all that.
Right.
And she gets nothing, which is very unfair, because I guess she injured that thing pretty bad, and he does admit later on in the movie that I would not have been able to beat it if he didn't hurt it first.
Right.
To be fair, but anyway, so again, she's like put low. She wants to make a name for herself, and because she got hurt and had to be dragged back and all that, like they're like, hey, you're not a hunter, stop it, just go and go back to your place where you belong and do that. So she's like, no, I'm not doing that. So again, she leaves on her own to go out and try to make a name for herself, to find something else to hunt, to make her own, I guess, hunter, hierarchy stance in the tribe, whatever that is. So she's out there, and she finds the bear, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So she's trying to fight this bear, and this bear is, this big, huge, giant bear, and she's trying to hunt it and not doing a fantastic job, but doing an okay job. She's using her dog to like distract it and, hurt it a little bit, but it's like obviously going to hurt her badly. So she like hides in like a beaver dam, I think.
Yes.
It's a bunch of sticks or something in a river. I think it's a beaver dam. Anyway, so she's in there and she's hiding. The bear is probably going to kill her. And then, of course, the predator comes out and like just destroys this bear. Obviously she sees that this is another, predator alien that's even more dangerous than the bear is. So now she's like, thinking that she's going to try to hunt this thing, right? This is going to be the thing that makes her, the best hunter in her tribe. But as she goes and hunts it, she gets captured by a bunch of French people.
Right.
There's one that I swear was Ryan Reynolds. Like, I swear he looked, because the one French guy looked back and I'm like, that's Ryan Reynolds. It looks identical to him, but it's not him. I literally had to pause the movie and look it up. I was like, is he a cameo in this movie? But no, it's not him. It just looks just like him. It looks like an old timey French Ryan Reynolds. Anyway, so there's a bunch of these French people. They capture her. They put her in a cage. And she sees her brother. Her brother is there also in a cage. And they're, messing with her. There's one guy that kind of sort of speaks her language. The rest of them are French. They don't speak anything. They don't speak her language, so they can't understand each other. But the one guy's trying to say, like, hey, we know you know what's out there. You need to help us, because apparently they're all out there trying to hunt this thing too.
Right.
Yeah. So, Predator like attacks the. Oh no, they bait it out first
With them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So they tie them to a pole. They use them as bait, and they like trap this big area around the pole, and they're all like hiding with their muskets, like waiting for this thing to come out. And it does come out, and it kills like almost everybody. But yeah, this predator is more, what do they call him? The feral. So he's like bare chested, like he's got a mask on, but it looks like a skull. It looks like it's made out of bone,
Right.
or something. And yeah, he doesn't use like guns or the plasma caster or the shoulder thing. He's all using like mostly hand to hand weapons. He does have the one little spear thing that shoots out the little arrows. Right. So it's not like he's using purely hand to hand weapons. And he's got those little things that chop people's legs off. I don't know what. They're like little spinning discs that chop people's legs off, whatever it is. So he does have some, like projectile weapons, but he's not using the traditional guns, the shoulder mounted guns that we see. So this, he's supposed to be more feral. He's supposed to be more, hand to hand, old school kind of predator. So he basically kills the shit out of everybody. They manage to escape and leave, probably because they're unarmed and the predator ignores them. And so they get back to the camp. Of course, mostly everybody is dead, but she manages to get her brother out. Her brother then starts, the predator, eventually as he's making his way and eliminating everybody, gets to their camp. He kills everybody that's left in the camp. And then her brother fights the predator to get her the time to get away.
Right.
And again, in that scene is where he like cuts across his chest.
Yep.
And that's supposed to be the scene, like where I was saying how Billy had that callback to his past life.
Yeah.
He supposedly that was one of his past lives, was that character. That's why he does that. That's why, like, when he's staring at the predator in the trees, that's why he's like in the trance like that, because apparently he was reliving his past life.
Interesting.
That's what they said. That's apparently canon. I don't know. I don't remember. I read the article, but I didn't get like whose name it was. But
okay,
whatever. That's what they say. Anyway, that's minor thing. So she, so the brother sacrifices himself. I'm trying to think exactly how it. Well, regardless, showdown with her and the predator, and she wins.
Right.
And then she goes back to her tribe with the predator's head, showing that, she has now beaten something that's even, more powerful than what her brother did, because this thing killed her brother and then she killed this thing. So now, she deserves to be the war chief, and she finally, succeeded in her goal of, proving everybody wrong that she has a place as a hunter and a warrior protector.
Right.
And at some point in there, I should mention that she got the hand musket. What do you call that? The pistol. That's the Raphael Andolini 1715, the gun that ends up in Danny Glover's hands at the end of Predator 2. She does get her hands on that gun. One of the French dudes had it. Who the French dude was apparently got it from some pirate. Like Raphael Andolini was supposed to be a pirate.
Okay.
So that's the connection.
Right. This movie was, I think, pretty good. There were talks, but they're going to release it all in the native language, right? Of the natives.
Yeah, no, it's not like that now. You have to just select the option. Like it's one of the audio options.
You can
listen. You watch it in Comanche if you want.
Yeah. I like that the Predator was not as advanced as we saw, 280 years or 270 years later, right? I think it was a good, thing. And you said that it became the war chief. I took it as their coming of age thing, that they had to hunt, that to prove that they're able to be a hunter, they had to hunt something that could hunt them, which is the same thing that the Predators did.
Well, I think to be the hunter, they had to, hunt something, bring it back, to show that they can provide. But in order to be like, the big time war chief, like the warrior of legend kind of thing or whatever, they have to kill something that can kill them or that's dangerous to them. Because when the brother came back, they gave him like that special stick and they gave him the special hat.
Right.
And all that stuff. And they called him war chief.
Okay.
Like they mentioned that he's now the war chief.
Okay, I just didn't know if anyone was able to do it at any time.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. They didn't give the details of like what it entails. It just, like I said, he came back with, after killing the cat, and they named him the war chief. So I don't know what's involved with that, but I would assume that means he's like the best warrior that they have, kind of thing.
that would lead the hunt, or a tribal war. Yeah.
Right, something like that.
So what would you say your highlights and low points of this are? I mean, there's a lot of good stuff that I feel in this movie.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, high points. I mean, I liked the like the fighting, the battle scenes in this one, like that, like long extended scene with, killing all the French people, all the way back from, when they had them tied to the pole all the way back into their camp. He like basically like exterminated like everybody.
Right.
That was very cool. It was very well done. I liked the way they did the weapons and the fighting and the effects and everything. It was good. It was a long kind of drawn out scene, but I thought it was done very, very well. Low points. I don't know if there was a lot of low points. The only thing I noticed is there was a lot of people getting knocked out.
She got knocked out at least like twice.
I know. It was a lot of like fade to black, like get hit in the head, fade to black knockout scenes, and then load the next scene. Like there was a bunch of those. That was the only thing I noticed. I don't think it's bad. It doesn't really take away from it, but I did notice it. So if there's a low point, I would say that's it. But I mean, it's mostly highs.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you about the highlights. Is the fight scene? I think it was a great callback. I like that. He was able to. His helmet was the skull, and yeah, just more hand-to-hand combat. I feel like he was obviously Predators are more advanced to us, but it's almost like I don't know if they just stepped back because they just lowered what weapons they take with us because we weren't as advanced as a fighting society at that point in time. I mean, do you think that was most likely the case that they might have had these weapons forever, obviously? And then they just kind of, brought down their level of technology to meet, what humans were capable of doing with fighting at that point in time in history.
I mean, yeah, that's possible. Yeah, I mean, or it might have just been a design choice where they just wanted to have an alien that was a little bit more, like feral. I think they called it the feral predator, just to kind of match the theme, I think.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know if would have been a choice by the Predator itself, but I mean, it definitely may have.
And I know they went back to a lot of practical effects, especially with the suit, right? They got this, was he soccer player that's got to play him? Just a giant dude.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I forgot it. Oh, there's another thing I mentioned. This Kevin Peter Hall, I'm sorry, is the guy who played the Predator in the first one. He played the Predator in the second one too.
Okay.
Even though it was a different Predator, it was still the same guy in the suit. And he died very shortly after Predator 2, which is why he never did another one.
So, is this horror?
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's basically we're back to like the original Predator, I would say, in that balance, right, of between action and horror. It's the same kind of thing. I would say this one maybe ekes out a little bit more action than the first Predator does, simply because there's not that element of getting hunted one by one. I mean, there kind of is, like he's killing the French people kind of one by one, but we don't like get to experience that mostly because we're mostly, centered around her character and her brother.
Right.
So I think it's a little bit more action than that one, simply because we don't have that, like, getting picked off kind of thing. But I mean, the element of it is definitely there. But I would say it's more of like a, like an action, like a coming of age.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was as gruesome and gory as the other ones, especially the first Predator.
No, there was a lot.
Predator 2.
There was a lot of cut off legs,
right?
But that was about it.
Like I know the Predator skinned animals. I don't recall the Predator skinning any people.
No, but I don't think he really had the time to.
Right, but but we did see him progress. Like he was hunting bigger and bigger animals as we were seeing him in it.
Right.
Like he started off like a snake, and then went to or started off rabbit, the snake, then like a cow, wolf, bear.
Yeah. Right.
So it's almost like
almost
like an introduction to figuring out what the predator of the Earth was.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Or just saying, which what is going to be the hardest thing for him to hunt? I think he was just kind of working his way down the list, to hunt everything to see what's going to give him that challenge that he's looking for.
Now, do you if we take Alien versus Predator out of this equation, you would say this is the 1st time that a predator would have come to Earth?
I would say with Aliens versus Predator being out of the equation, I would say it's definitely a strong possibility.
Because why else would he work up his way on the animals?
Right.
If it wasn't for that, I mean,
no, like I said,
yeah.
Without Aliens versus Predator in there, it is definitely a high probability that this is probably, if not the first time, heavily suggested that it's the first time that they were here. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because again, the earliest contact that we have that we know that predators are here, only following the Predator timeline, is 1715 because they had that gun and they handed it to him. Right. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that they were there in 1715. I mean, they put the year on that gun and that heavily suggests that they were there at that time. But that doesn't necessarily mean, they could have gotten that gun the day before.
Right. Right.
Because it existed that whole time, but they're just trying to suggest that it is.
So we'll pick it up from here. As a franchise as a whole, how do you view Predator? Is it like your top of your list? Is it mid list? Does it make your top 10 franchises?
Yeah, I'd say it definitely makes the top 10. I mean, just because, again, the heavy dose of nostalgia there, because I watched this movie so many times when I was a kid. Hold on.
Does it make your top 10 list?
Yes, it's a definitely nice top 10 list. A lot of that is probably a heavy dose of nostalgia, just because I watched it so many times as a kid, and I loved this franchise. I loved the Terminator. Like I said, I was a huge Schwarzenegger fan at the time, but this one was one of the best ones. Of course, it was sci-fi and it was Schwarzenegger, so of course it was way up there on my list. If you would have asked me this when I was a kid, it would probably be definitely in the top 3. But yeah, I would say, as far as franchises go, it's definitely in the top 10.
I mean, do you think there's more highs than lows as this franchise, including Alien vs. Predator?
If you include Alien vs. Predator, yes, because Aliens vs. Predator, they do some interesting things, but for the most part, they kind of abandon a lot of the, stuff that's been happening in other movies. But yeah, if you include those in the list, then yes, it does. Because as a whole, the franchise has been pretty solid. Except for I think the Predator is the weakest one. But then both of the Aliens vs. Predator are underneath that, I would say. But yeah, so including those in there. So yeah, you're looking at 7 movies total, and then 3 of those are not good.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So high point, low point, high point. Yes, it's definitely back and forth.
I'm in agreement. Like I said, the Predator was pretty bad. I think Requiem was the worst. Then the Predator, then Alien vs. Predator, then probably Predator 2. Top one for me is probably Predators. But where would you like to see this franchise go next? I think they're talking about a TV series coming up in the next year or two. Do we want to see more of this? The natives in the next one? Do you want to see us go back into present day? What do you think we should go from here?
The rumor mill is saying that they're going to actually, the next one is going to be, Raphael Andolini himself is going to be the next one. I think he's some kind of pirate or something. I guess, 1700s is not that far off from the pirate age. So I guess they could do a pirate one. I don't know. That would be interesting. I guess he could hide in the crow's nest of ships.
Right.
But there's a huge outcry on social media right now to do one in feudal Japan, with samurais fighting predators. That would be awesome. I think that's just an idea that people like. It's not like there's no studios doing that or anything.
Right.
As far as Where I'd like to see it go, I think it can literally go anywhere. I mean, it's basically at this point, it's kind of like how Assassin's Creed is.
Yeah.
To where you can like set a game anywhere. You can set a Predator franchise anywhere. I mean, if you count Aliens versus Predator, they've been here for thousands of years. So you could literally pick any time in the entirety of human history and put a Predator there, and set a period piece there. Or again, you can go in the far future and do it there too, which, we do. Well, I mean, at least the aliens are still around in the far future. I'm sure it's very easy for a Predator to also be there. I mean, like I said, at this point, it can go anywhere. I mean, where would I like to go? I mean, I'd like to see an Aliens versus Predator set in like the Colonial Marines area of the future. I think that would be cool.
So you want to
you want
to see the 3-way with humans being at the same level all the time with them,
right? Yeah, I mean, like the games, like the Aliens vs Predator games, they're set in that future time with Colonial Marines and aliens and predators. I don't know if they're necessarily on even terms, but at least they're closer. Right. At least they're definitely up there. Like the humans have infrared vision at that time, and their helmets, their weapons are better, their armor is better. They can travel between planets and stuff. I mean, they're obviously a lot closer to the predators then. I think it would be an interesting mix there. But I also like that idea of that samurai one. I think that would be really cool too. So again, it can go anywhere. I would like to see it go either one of those two places.
I mean, I think they should revisit Alien versus Predator, and I think you're right. The way to do it is the future. That you want them to team up with humans to fight aliens. The aliens are always going to be the disease that they have to eradicate from spreading.
Yeah, I mean, I think out of the three, aliens are always going to be the worst ones because, I mean, they are so dangerous. I mean, if left unchecked, they could easily wipe out a civilization. Right. I mean, like they, if you look at the Aliens vs Predator, they did. They wiped out their civilization on Earth. But yeah, so I mean, it's definitely possible. But yes, I would very much like to see that.
So with this, this series, this franchise, and even future stuff, do you think continuity is the least bit important to this? Or like you said, you can go the Assassin's Creed way and just be any period of history, and there doesn't have to be tie-ins. Like Easter eggs, sure, but continuity-wise, does it have to be there?
I mean, it doesn't have to be. It does if it's set close enough in the timeline. You know what I mean? Like, like between Predator 1 and Predator 2, it's technically 10 years, right? Because Predator 1 happened in 87, Predator 2 happens in 97. So yeah, there's not going to be a whole lot of difference there. So they had to, talk about the first one, because obviously without that first one, they wouldn't know what to do in the second one, right? So that's so close together that they have to be, they have to have that continuity there. Aliens vs Predator, obviously just out the window. I mean, they do whatever the hell they want to do. They kind of break continuity in a lot of places. Again, because they just kind of made their own rules, it seems. I don't know why they didn't follow rules at all, but they broke the rules for like both franchises. But again, I mean, most of the mainline ones did a really good job with it.
Would you like to see this more stay action, horror, or sci-fi, or more in one area than the next, or do you think it needs to be balanced between those three?
I think a balance between those three is good. I mean, as we've seen, like some of these are good, even if they kind of skew one way or the other way. I mean, like, Predator and Predators, right? I mean, like Predator is a little bit more actiony, it's like half action, half horror. So whereas like Predators is, there's a lot of that lot more tension, a lot more suspense to it, right? So I mean, yeah, I mean, those are definitely the three components, but I think they can move around quite a bit as long as they maintain those three. But yeah, I mean, I would personally like to see more like Predators,
right?
Just because I like that storyline so much. But yeah, I mean, they've all been pretty good so far. I mean, The Predator is the biggest letdown. I think that was more of just expectations, just of who was making it and who was involved in it. I thought it was going to be way better than it was. It was just disappointment.
I mean, do you think a predator always has to be the villain? Or a villain?
No. I mean, in a mainline Predator movie, yes, I think there has to be a Predator villain. That doesn't necessarily mean that there can't be another Predator involved that's not a villain. That is like, one of the hero type people. I mean, that's definitely possible. But I think one of them has to be, the villain in every movie. I think that only makes sense.
Now, do you think we could ever get something where a human goes to the predator world and is able to be the predator to them?
Because
we're always generally we're the prey, but do you think they could ever flip it to the point where we start, if we get into the future as we colonize space, that we could flip it and see us become the predator as the species?
Okay, well, here's an interesting thought. Remember, I talked earlier about how, like if we met a bunch of, crazy hillbillies in the woods, right, and then, escaped them and then went back to home and said, hey, everybody on that whole planet is crazy hillbillies with guns, because that's the only people that we experienced, right? So what if we go to one of their planets and like, hey, screw them, we're going to hunt them for once, right?
Right.
And then we go to that planet and we find out that these hunter versions of their race are like like this outcast offshoot that is like, kind of exiled from their society. And now we're hunting down and killing completely innocent people. Right. Yeah. So like, you could make the humans be the bad guys thinking that they're, getting revenge, when in reality, they're just killing innocent people because these other predators are the crazy hillbillies with guns.
I think that'd be an interesting flip.
I think that would be cool.
I mean, do you think that'd be a good social commentary for it too? Is that we become?
Oh, it definitely would.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good movie.
Yeah. Well, again, it's the thing is, like everybody right now thinks like everybody in the entire Predator's race is a crazy hunter, but obviously they can't be, because they have all this technology. I mean, they have like those like first aid kits that can like patch all these holes and like heal them and stuff like that. Like all those weapons, they were made by somebody,
right?
So like obviously everybody can't be a hunter if you have all this technology. Like who makes their spaceships? They have to like fuel those things up. I mean, they have to have scientists that develop these new technologies and new weapons and shit. I mean, sure, their technology might be more skewed to like weapons and hunting and shit like that, but they definitely have scientists and they definitely have manufacturers, which means they have to have bureaucracy too. I mean, they can't all be hunters.
So are we seeing more of their military side of things? Potentially.
Well, I don't think it's they're necessarily their military. I think it's just, well, I mean, it might be part of their military. I mean, who knows? That might be how they train their military. That's how you earn your chops, is you work your way up, right, by hunting different things to show that, oh, you can hunt these other exotic animals. Okay, now you're worthy of protecting the people or whatever. I mean, that's definitely possible.
Okay.
Oh, I guess it's a little late to be saying it now, but like the actual name of their race is the Yautja.
Yautja?
Yautja. It's Yautja. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. I've really only seen it in text form.
Is
I
it
don't
in
know
the
how
comics?
to pronounce it, but yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, it's in the extended universe, but enough people have like accepted that's the name of their race, is the Yautja. And then the other, because I guess the blood feud thing is in the extended universe too. So like in Predators, the other group,
yeah,
that hunts the classic ones. So the classic Predators are the Yautja, and then the other ones are I forgot their name. They're like it's like a 3-syllable thing, like Mingo Wen or something like that. But yeah, they're like the bad.
Do you think the comics are good enough for us to pull from for source material?
There's definitely some. There are definitely some that are goofy.
Right.
I mean, like they have some of them where they're aliens as predator ones, but they center around the predators, and the predators are just like they land on the planet like to hunt aliens, and they're just like talking to each other like normal dudes. Like they have names like Fred and George, and they're just like talking to each other like this is like like they're just hanging out like wood buddies. It's weird. So, I mean, there's probably some stuff, but I mean, there's definitely more room. Anybody can tell a story
Right.
in that world. I mean, there's so much, stuff you can pull from. I mean, so much stuff you can do. I think it would be cool to see, more of their world a little bit. I think, like we were talking about, something like where you show that they're not all hunters. There's just some of them are. I would like to see more of that. Where what people's takes on what they think their actual culture is.
You
really
want
like.
you want deeper lore.
Well, I always want deeper lore. I mean, that would be fantastic, but I don't know if it'll ever get there. But yeah, I mean, I think that would be a definitely cool place to go. But again, we can also have these period pieces of just, people fighting predators in different time periods with different weapons and methods and shit. I mean, we can go that way for a few movies at least, I'm sure.
Yeah, so you think this is a franchise that could last another 35 years?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like, well, I mean, you got some franchises which center around like a character, right?
Right.
Which means you can only, have it realistically in that character's lifetime. And this one, it's settled around basically like a race of people. So as long as that race is around, which we've already established, it's been around for hundreds, possibly thousands of years, so it can be set anywhere.
Okay. I mean, I think that's a good place to end this.
Mm-hmm.
So, so let's stay tuned, our listeners, for next week's podcast. We'll be discussing Jordan Peele's movies, including the newest entry, Nope. So this is Graveyard saying, have you checked on the children?
This is Salem saying, long live the new flesh.
Until next week.